Hello, Johnny Horrorheads, and welcome to another installment of the Johnny Horror Podcast. On this episode, Kalen and I discuss 5 of our favorite and least favorite films from 2023. That's 5 films apiece on either end. So we end up discussing about 18 films because we do have a couple of overlapping flicks thrown in there. Um, yeah, it's a nice lengthy discussion. We go over 3 hours long, so sit back, relax, try not to have your feathers ruffled too much by some of our picks, and I hope you enjoy the show.
Welcome back to the Johnny Horror Podcast. I am your host, Johnny Horror, and with me tonight, my fellow co-host, partner in crime, and some might say a misunderstood genius. Uh, introduce yourself.
Kalen Berriman.
How are you tonight, sir?
Living the dream, brother.
I'm right there with you, pal. It's somebody's dream. I know it. And one of these
right.
days, I'm gonna sell it to him. Buddy, thanks for joining me tonight. I feel like we're probably just like maybe a little past due getting our favorite movies of last year out. You know, this is probably gonna drop at the end of January, but I don't know about you, but December was a very busy month for me, and it just flew by. So yeah, we're getting it in where we fit it in, I suppose. But
yeah, I think we only talked once in December.
Yeah,
in the entire month of December. Yeah.
I mean, we did a podcast. The last time we did a podcast was in like the beginning of November, and it dropped at the end of November. But yeah, then we got to hang out for your birthday in December, which is awesome because I can't remember the last time that we actually got to do that. So I was glad that we got to do that this past year. But anyways, I digress. To all of our listeners and followers, yeah, we're talking about our favorite horror movies and movies of 2023. So we have a little bit of a fun format tonight that will hopefully keep things interesting. We each have 5 movies that we were either disappointed by or were our least favorite films of the year, and 5 movies that we really enjoyed or were our favorite movies of the year. And the way we're going to go through this tonight is Kalen's going to start off with a movie that he was disappointed by, and then I will give a movie I was disappointed by, and then Kalen's going to say a movie he enjoyed, and then I will say a movie I enjoyed, leading up to our number one of each of those slots. So we're going to start at the bottom and work our way up to our favorite film of the year and our either least favorite or most disappointing film of the year. So hopefully that is explanatory, and if not, then just settle in for a long winter's listen, and I think you'll get the gist of it once we get going.
That's right.
But before we jump into that age-old tradition here on the Johnny Horror Podcast, what are you drinking tonight?
Bubbly. Blackberry sparkling water. Because I'm a wild child.
Hey, I got a creamy root beer Zevia.
Hey, there we go. Those are excellent.
Mm-hmm.
Quite a treat.
It's delicious. They taste about 3,000 times better, and I've done the exact science and measurements on this. It is exactly 3,000 times better that they taste when you are high off of edibles. So
100%.
My research was very very conclusive last night on that. So
you heard him, folks. You heard him.
The Jony Orr podcast, sponsored by Zevia sodas and edibles.
I was just about to say, like, hey, local dispensaries, sponsor us.
Please, I'll take any and all free drugs. Thank you very much. But without any further ado, let's dive on into our favorite and least favorite movies of 2023. Kalen, take it away. What is your first pick for a least favorite movie of 2023?
So, a real quick housekeeping here. We are excluding non-genre pictures.
Yeah.
So, like, Jonathan and I both absolutely loved Oppenheimer, for example.
Yes.
We're not going to put Oppenheimer on our list here. It's not because we didn't think it was a fantastic movie. It's just not what we're talking about today.
Exactly.
And one other thought is that I'm not actually super into bashing people and bringing people down, at least not publicly.
Yeah.
So the list that I have prepared here for my like least favorite is really more of things I was looking forward to that weren't quite what I wanted them to be. Yeah. So this isn't like these movies suck, these filmmakers suck, and we hate them. That's not what we're saying here. It's just these were movies that I wanted a specific thing from, or I really wanted a lot from, and I didn't get what I wanted. And I think that that's interesting fodder for conversation. Obviously, we both do. But yeah, this isn't just us sitting here whining and being negative about how all the filmmakers suck and are terrible. We don't do that kind of thing around here.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%, and I thank you for putting that out there up front. I'm very much the same way, despite what some of my reviews.
Well, you get over the top in your reviews.
Yeah. I mean, I think you can tell just from my demeanor here versus my demeanor in any of my reviews that is very much performance. Mm-hmm. That being said, I think I was really, really hard on Night Swim.
You were.
But that movie just did the ultimate sin, which is be boring.
Right.
Which I can say, with the exception of like one movie, like on my bad list, none of the films on my bad list did I find boring except for one. And so all of these movies I think I will be pretty fair to overall. But yeah, we recognize that filmmaking is a very, very, very hard thing, and to anybody who gets the opportunity to do it, and I'm sure so many people that worked on these movies put their heart and soul into it. Right. So by no means are we coming at them directly or personally. This is just, like I said, least favorite or most disappointing film. Yeah. We're not trying to be hateful or vindictive in any way, shape, or form. So, take it away.
So with that said, and some of my most disappointing movies here, some of them I think are objectively good movies. They just were disappointing for me. Yeah. So anyway, my first disappointing movie of the year is Rebel Moon.
Yeah. One that I have not seen, by the way. So
you haven't seen Rebel Moon? Okay, so written and directed by Zack Snyder.
I did watch the trailer on it yesterday, and I just because I knew you were interested in it, I'd heard nothing but bad things, and I watched the honest trail, and I was like, all right, I don't think I need to watch it now. But
no, you don't. Yeah, I don't think you need to watch it. So you and I have been friends for a long time, and I would say when we met, you would be able to pretty easily describe me as a Zack Snyder fan, right? Like when we met, if you had said, "Are you a Zack Snyder fan?" I would have been like, "Well, yeah." I'd be like,
Yeah, at the
300?
time, he had like I think the most disappointing movie that he had put out across the board was Watchmen, but you and I both think that's a pretty awesome adaptation.
Yep.
You know?
I like that movie. And I liked 300, and I really liked Dawn of the Dead.
Yeah.
So, you know, I would say a big Zack Snyder fan when we met. And, you know, Zack Snyder had a stretch there where I didn't love everything he was doing. And when it was announced that he was doing a movie that he had pitched to Lucasfilm as a Star Wars flick, I was actually really excited because I was like, I think Zack Snyder doing Star Wars fanfic is a great idea. And a lot of people have blasted this movie for being derivative. I don't think there's anything wrong with being derivative. Yeah. I think the movie we both have is our #1 movie of the year. I think some of the best things about it are derivative, and I think that's awesome. There's nothing wrong with being derivative.
Some of them might be derivative of some of certain people's favorite movies.
That's right. That's your God, right? So to me, derivative is not the sin that the movie committed. The sin the movie committed was being written poorly and being paced poorly and being boring and not making me care about anything and just not engaging me on any level. Like, that's the sin it committed. I don't care that it could have been a Star Wars movie or that it hit the same beats of other movies I've seen. Lots of stuff that I love does that. Yeah. But it just wasn't engaging. And it didn't have anything. The good stuff that's derivative is derivative, but it has its own thing to say.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, Stranger Things is absolutely, the first season of Stranger Things is a cross between E.T. and It. But in trying to do an adaptation of E.T. and It finds its own identity. You know what I mean? And that's what makes it good. This doesn't have its own identity. It's just this kind of poor attempt at a Star Wars movie. And you just don't care about the characters. You don't care about the overarching story. You don't really care about the lore of the universe very much. Like, it just doesn't get you on any particular level.
Now, my limited knowledge, again, from just watching the Honest trailer, is that the plot is very, very similar to just Star Wars. There is a group of people that are trying to go against a, fucking, for lack of a better word, Nazi style army.
An evil fascist empire. Yeah.
Yeah. And there might be, a mercenary sort of character and, farmer sort of character and a helpful butler robot of some sort of, character, and that they're, all kind of banding together to do this rebel cause. And the gist of that I got was, this is Star Wars. This is just Star Wars, which makes me wonder what his pitch was, because the story, it's granted, it is a 2-part thing. We're going to get the second part.
Yep, that's right. That's right.
Next couple of months or something like that. But so that maybe he could do it. It could totally flip it on its head. But yeah, what's that pitch look like? Hey, let's do Star Wars, but let's make it dark and grittier.
The pitch was, let's do 7 Samurai by way of Star Wars, but R-rated. That was the pitch. That's the pitch.
Yeah.
And, if you could do that and make it amazing, like if it's just got compelling writing and great characters and incredible action and, you know what I mean, then I'm on board with that. If that's your pitch and you can make it work. But the execution just isn't there. It's just not. Like, there's only one fight scene in the entire movie that interested me at all. And the one moment I'm talking about, it takes place early in the movie in a barn. And it's where we find out that our main character is actually something of a badass. In that one scene, I'm in on the movie. I go, okay, I care about what's happening right now. And then they just immediately and permanently lost me after that. And every action sequence after that, I was kind of bored. I mean, every conversation after that, I was very bored. You know, there were things I liked. I think the lead, Sofia Boutella, like I think she's doing the best she can with the material that she's got. And I like some of the set design a lot. But that's all I can say that really works for me about the movie. Other than that, it's really this is pretty harsh, but one person described it as this is a full blown mockbuster, and I'm like, it kind of is.
Yeah, that's. I mean,
it's harsh critique, but it's kind of accurate.
Yeah,
yeah,
I can totally see that. Having never watched an actual mockbuster, unless you can, you know, I feel like Sharknado falls into that
little bit
story. But those are the types of bad movies that I can't stand. Like if you're intentionally trying to be bad, like it doesn't work for me. You have to be trying to be good and be bad.
And be bad. Yeah. Right. That's right.
Yeah, this is kind of like the last kind of thing for me, like when it came to Zack Snyder, like when I heard about this and was interested and I saw the trailer and I was like, all right, that looks pretty cool.
Right. Cool trailer. It was a cool trailer.
I mean, all of his movies are designed around
cool trailers,
being cool trailers, you know. And I mean, I've been super duper disappointed before. We've talked about it on this podcast before, like Sucker Punch just being. There's that movie.
I feel like we had been excited about that movie.
Yeah.
Leading up to it, and everyone in our friend group was just like, "What the hell was that?"
Yeah. Hot chicks fighting giant robots should never be boring, and
right.
Very, very boring, unfortunately. And I don't know, man. Like I know you and I have talked about you prefer the Joss Whedon cut of Justice League.
I prefer things about it.
Yeah. And I can see both ends. I genuinely really, really enjoyed the Zack Snyder cut of Justice League that we got a couple of years ago now. Wow.
That's a few years ago now.
But you know, I was really, really disappointed by what was it? Army of the Dead. That movie had so much going for it, and again, just boring and bad writing and
just
dumb
bad
decisions.
I hate to say it, but I watched Army of the Dead again, and I was like, this is just bad.
Yeah.
And it's funny. I actually rewatched Zack Snyder's Justice League, and it's like the third hour of the movie, of the 4 hours, the third hour I really like. I really like that third hour.
Of all the hours.
It's just because that's where they all team up and take down the bad guy. Like that hour of the movie is really compelling movie. Like that's a good movie. But it's just the 2 hours before that are so slow. And then the last hour is so like, what the fuck? Like, what are we watching? You know?
I don't know. Maybe that I don't know. Even when that guy does smaller stuff, it doesn't quite work anymore. Maybe he just doesn't.
Well, that's the thing is Rebel Moon was smaller stuff.
Yeah.
That's
a bummer.
Yeah.
I have no desire to watch it now. I mean, unless for some reason the second part comes out and people are like, "Oh my god, this is the shit."
That's right.
Then I'll go and watch the first. What is the first part? 2 hours long?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
It's like a 2 hour and 10-minute movie.
Jesus Christ Almighty.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I have no good seg for this. I'm just going to talk about my, first disappointment on my list, and this is a film that I expected to be disappointed by. I think most people expected to be disappointed by it. I think we all would have been very, very shocked and surprised had it turned out to be an amazing piece of art. That being said, after I watched it, I did not hate it by any means. Do I think it needs to exist? No, but we have it, and I think it is very competently made and a fine story. And the film is The Exorcist Believer. You and I have talked about this at least once on this podcast and a handful of times in person. This is a movie that I think has an interesting story, an interesting perspective, and the weakest part of the whole damn thing is that they decided to shoehorn in the Exorcist brand into this movie. So obviously you're dealing with two teenage girls that try and summon something, and then they each get possessed by this demonic force, and then the two families have to come together and bring in various forms of religion to try and combat this demonic presence possessing their daughters. And that right there, I think, is a very good setup for a possession movie. Two families from differing viewpoints. You have the protagonist is a non-believer, an atheist, whose wife had died in childbirth, and then a family who comes from a very religious background, bringing in all of their Catholicism and all that sort of stuff. And then the two families also bring in outside help in the form of Chris McNeil, played by Ellen Bernstein, because she had dealt with this sort of situation before. So I think all of that is very interesting. The least compelling part for me being the Chris McNeil stuff, because it doesn't make any sense in terms of believability. Like, cool, like some gal wrote a book about her dealing with her own possession. She might know how to handle other possessions. She's not an exorcist. What the fuck does she have to do with it?
Yeah, I mean, 100%.
So that was the most surprising thing to me, is that the rest of the movie worked very, very well for me. I think it's a very good looking movie. I think the performances in it are pretty darn good. And I think honestly, like, the writing in terms of dialogue is much more believable for me than a lot of the dialogue we got in David Gordon Green's Halloween movies. You and I have had conversations about that too, how I had some serious issues with how people talked in that trilogy. I'm just like, this is not how humans talk.
Right.
You don't like say something to somebody and then have them completely disregard it and start talking about, you know, the boogeyman when they're like literally having a conversation with you. It's just not how people communicate. That's not how people talk. That being said, in The Exorcist Believer, I believed all the dialogue. I believed all the conversations. The acting was, you know, I bought it all. So I don't understand all the hate that this movie gets. I don't understand it at all.
I was just about to tell you that you don't sound like you're reviewing a disappointing movie right now.
I know. I'm kind of getting to that like the problem is that this is not a bad film the way that everyone has like trashed it. It doesn't do anything particularly amazing. It doesn't move the franchise forward or in the end really do anything so compelling that it warrants its own existence. But it doesn't hurt the original film either. So I don't understand all that hate. Like, I agree, it's not like an amazing movie by any means, but I went into it very much expecting to just like kind of roll my eyes every other scene, and that was not the case. So all of that said, I'm bummed that, it, brought just another bad or another like pointless sequel into the Exorcist franchise, because that only really has two good movies in it,
It's a 2-movie franchise in my opinion.
Yeah. Why the fuck? Every time I raise my hands, I saw like a thumbs up, and then I saw.
I'm trying to see if mine will do it. Nope. Yep.
What the hell's? Am I doing that? Who's doing that?
I don't know.
I don't know either. As far as I know, this is just you and me on this recording.
It's the ghost of the machine, hopefully.
Where the fuck did those balloons come from?
It would only be appropriate that we have a haunted podcast. So.
I know, right? Because I'm talking smack about The Exorcist. You saw this movie though. How do you feel about it overall?
Well, I like David Gordon Green's Halloween trilogy. I've recently rewatched all 3 movies.
Did you come around to Halloween Ends a little bit more?
What's that?
I said, have you come around to Halloween Ends a little bit more?
Yeah.
That makes me happy.
And Kills. Like I like that series now. It's a discombobulated series, and I don't think either of the follow-ups are as good as the first one, which I think is the best pure sequel to Halloween, in the sense that it's great for similar reasons to the original film. But I like that series. I like David Gordon Green, and I was looking forward to this movie. Now, it did not live up to what I hoped it would be, which I hoped would be like the 3rd great movie in this series. But ultimately, I liked the movie. Like, I came away from it having liked it. There were weird things. There's a lot of things you could poke holes in, inconsistencies. It's very bizarre to me that I'm sorry, what's Reagan's mother's name, the character name?
Chris McNeil.
It's very weird to me that no one acknowledges that Chris McNeil was a full-blown A-list actor at any point.
Oh, yeah.
Because in the original film, she's an A-list actor.
Yeah,
she's a star. Yeah. Well, like if Robert Redford, if we ran into Robert Redford, we wouldn't be like, oh, it doesn't matter. He was only famous in the 70s. We'd be like, wow, that's Robert Redford. No one acknowledges that she was a superstar in the 70s.
Yeah,
so I think that's a little weird.
You think about the characters who are really dealing with her, the adults, they would have been probably of age to like know who she was and know who that she was a star growing up. Like, so
you would know that she was an A-list superstar.
Yeah,
I would think
exactly. Even if she had fallen, like even after the events of The Exorcist, like if she just go back to acting, they probably watched movies with her. And it wouldn't be like they just never had no idea who this person was,
Right, and she'd probably, like, if she was as big as they're saying, she's someone who would have been, like, referenced in pop culture. Anyway, that part doesn't make sense to me. You there, buddy?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. Anyway, I ultimately, like, I thought it was a pretty good movie. I enjoyed it. I don't know if it's going to have staying power for me where I'm going to be like, oh, we better go back and watch, The Exorcist Believer again.
Yeah.
But I definitely didn't walk out of the theater like bummed out that it had been bad. Like I enjoyed the film. I thought it was spooky and interesting, and I liked the characters and I liked the story and I liked it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, again, for me, it's like there's a reason why it's my number 5 on
Right.
my least disappointed, because like,
Yeah.
or least favorite, because this is not a movie that I absolutely, I don't hate it by any means. I think it's a very I'm conflicted by it, because there's a lot of stuff in it I like. I really like the marketing material. Like, I
Yeah.
love the poster and everything,
Yeah.
and I
The
think
marketing was great for this movie.
man.
I can I tell you, I really think that sometimes people really get caught up in group think,
Oh yeah,
follow the leader. And I think they hate this movie. Like, if you pull up its RT and stuff, like, I think a lot of that's just group think.
yeah.
I think that's just like, oh, the 10 people ahead of me said it was bad, so I have to say it was bad. And then you go down the line and everyone's saying it's bad. And then you have this whole narrative about this movie being this incompetent, terrible mess that just isn't true.
Yeah, no,
You know what I mean? It's just not true.
Dude, one of the things that I genuinely liked about the damn thing was like that it's not a twist ending because you see it coming, but the fact that they actually do that thing, pretty ballsy, you know? That was one of the things that, like, I was like, dude, that's a gut punch. Like, that's something that none of the other movies have really done in that way. So, like, in those terms, like, I do give it credit. I don't know. It's like, I said this in my review, that unless a possession movie is willing to go harder than the original Exorcist, it's never gonna be better. It's never even gonna compare. There are no possession movies that I would put within a fucking mile of the original Exorcist. Because none of them go as hard. None of them are as scary. None of them give you as much to think about. The Exorcist, the original, is not a jump scare sort of film.
Right.
It is a movie that scares you and makes you question your own morals and beliefs, you know? And all the other films, including Exorcist 3, I feel are there to try to shock you as opposed to genuinely move you. And I think that's my main disappointment with this movie, is that it didn't feel like it even attempted to go hard to reach that level, you know?
Sure.
But anyways, since I've been so generous to my, one of my dads, I suppose it's probably about time we start talking about some good stuff. So why don't you hit me with your first movie that you really, really liked this past year?
So, I mentioned groupthink a second ago.
Mm-hmm.
And, some people might not like where I'm going to go with this, but I think there were a few movies that were affected by that this year, where the first couple of people said it was bad, and that created a wave of everyone saying it's bad, and it sort of created this narrative that I think was not necessarily true for a few movies this year.
Mm-hmm.
And the first movie on my list is one such movie, and that is Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny.
Ooh, yeah.
If you look around at the narrative about this film, it's largely very negative.
Yeah.
Like, it was this incredibly incompetent mess of a film. And, to quote Adam Sandler, I disagree. It's just not true, man. It's just not a mess. It's not bad. It's not incompetent. It may not be for everyone, and we certainly all have different tastes and different things hit us differently. But this is an interesting film. It's well written. It's well shot and well performed, with exhilarating action sequences and interesting characters and an interesting story. And, it does dope shit and it goes dope places. And it was maybe not everything that I hoped it would be, but you know, for a guy who very much was hoping for one more Indiana Jones banger, ultimately, I feel like I got that. I feel like I got one more Indiana Jones movie that I can look forward to rewatching, which I thought I was going to get back in 2008, and I didn't quite get. And I think I got it here, and I'm really grateful for that.
Have you? I'm assuming you've rewatched it since.
You know, it's so funny. I've been meaning to, and I haven't gotten around to it, but I've just spent a lot of time meditating on it.
Yeah, I've I keep on thinking about it. I'm like, oh, it's on Disney Plus, and it's just not where I'm at in the moment.
Right.
Like,
I'm definitely going to. It's gonna get a rewatch pretty soon.
I mean, I actually kind of want to. I want to own it.
Same.
Is it out to buy yet? I feel like
it came out in December. I'm thinking about waiting to see if they do a 4K set for all 5 movies.
Yeah, that'd be a good thing.
That's my hope. Yeah.
But yeah, it's definitely a movie I need to go back and sit with. At least one of the movies that we're going to talk about in a little bit is a movie that I liked when I saw, but I didn't like it as much until like it wasn't what I was hoping it would be. And then when I went back and did a rewatch with my expectations in check, I liked it much, much more. So, and I liked Dial of Destiny quite a bit. I know that you and I had a discussion about like where I thought it could have improved in terms of pathos. But all that said, you know, I do agree with everything that you said, that it's very exciting picture and with a lot on its mind, and does some very, very interesting and fun things. And it is a fun movie, which, you know, really at the end of the day is mostly what I want when I go to the movies, is to be entertained, have a good time. So, yeah, I agree. I think, I don't know, man. I know that the CG is not quite where it needed to be, but it's also kind of astounding what they were able to pull off all at the same time. And I'm sure that people took issue with that. Took issue with, you know, seeing, you know, old man Jones doing stuff. I don't know, man. I certainly don't see any reason to really dislike that movie, you know?
Yep.
Well, I guess I'll take the next good one here. I guess I'll take the next, like, we're doing tit for tat. Who the fuck else is gonna take it? My next one is a film called Dark Harvest. So Dark Harvest is based upon a novel of the same name that was released, I believe, in mid-2000s. The story concerns a small town in rural America during like the 1960s-ish, early 60s, late 50s. And they have this ceremony that they perform every Halloween, in which all the teenage boys are sent out to hunt down this creature known as Sawtooth Jack. That if the creature comes alive every October 31st, and if it reaches the church in the central part of the town, then it will lead to famine and death for said town. So they send out a group of teenage boys to go and hunt down this mythical creature.
Can I interrupt you for one moment?
Yeah.
I haven't seen this, and it sounds fucking cool.
I highly recommend it. I'm not, obviously, we're not really doing spoilers on this. Maybe mild spoilers if you're unfamiliar with the content, but we're not going to be spoiling anything here as to get you interested to go watch these movies if you haven't seen them. Yes, very, very, very cool flick that I just stumbled upon via social media. One of the things I follow on Instagram released the trailer for it. It's probably Bloody Disgusting or something like that. But apparently it had been in development hell for years and years and years. But takes place during Halloween. I hadn't really seen a movie released in 2023 that had that Halloween like vibe aesthetic, something that was gonna have good rewatch value moving forward. And dude, there's just like pumpkins everywhere, and just the design of the creature is, you know, very, very Halloweeny. The all the boys, like, they go, like, it's a whole, like, the whole town, all the teenage boys in the whole town, like, they all go out and they all dress up in some sort of different way. And the design of the main group of boys, their get up, you know, they have like the greaser vibe going on, you know, blue jean jacket, like slick back hair, and, you know, Chuck Taylors and whatnot. And the masks that they wear are the Crimson Ghost masks, you know. So it's just like very aesthetically pleasing. The film just is beautiful to look at. Some of the shots in this, like, it's astounding to me what they were able to pull off with what I assume was a fairly low budget. But the gore and the shit that happens to some of the characters in this is fucking gnarly. The story is very interesting, very compelling. The lead actor just fucking kills it. Can't recommend it enough. It's definitely going to be one that I keep watching every Halloween season moving forward. So that in itself is an awesome thing. And yeah, it really kind of, I had a couple other ones that I was going to kind of throw in this slot, but this one won out just strictly based on what a surprise it was, how unexpected it was. A lot of these other movies were kind of, you know, there was either knowledge of the film or anticipation of the film, and this one was just one that kind of really came out of nowhere for me, and it was really a very pleasant surprise.
Where can our listeners find that movie?
You can get it on Amazon.
Okay.
Right? You can rent it, I believe, which is what I did.
Great.
Currently no idea if it's coming, you know, being available on an actual streaming service to like watch for free, but I know you can rent it on Amazon. And I don't know, hard copy media is, you know, who the fuck is giving me thumbs up?
I think it's because you're doing thumbs ups. Like when you do this or this, like you were going like this and then it came up. Watch, do it again.
Thumbs up. Thumbs up.
Try the other side.
I don't know.
All right.
It goes to the machine, baby.
Machine. Wouldn't have it any other way.
But yeah, definitely worth checking out if you can get your hands on it. Dark Harvest.
Dark Harvest. Got it. It's on the list.
Hell yeah. Speaking of lists, we're just gonna keep on moving up our list. Kalen, hit me with your next, your number 4 for your least favorite list.
All right. I'm gonna make some enemies here.
Go.
The next movie on my disappointing list is Barbie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A horror movie in and of itself.
It's quite a horror film. Yeah.
All right, so this is a movie I have not seen.
You haven't seen Barbie?
I have not seen Barbie.
Oh, my brother.
Dude, there was a moment where it was like, maybe it'll, because I was caught up in the whole hype of Barbieheimer.
Yeah.
But I really just wanted to see Oppenheimer. Like, the only thing that really interested me in Barbie was Ryan Gosling because he's just fucking the best in everything that he's in. So I love him so much. But the movie, I just had no. I'm sorry, I had zero desire to see it. So, but please tell me why it was a disappointment to you.
Well, so for me personally, like that trailer. The main trailer where she's like, do you guys ever think about dying? I think that trailer looks like an amazing movie.
Yeah.
And it looks like a movie that's going to wrestle with very adult concepts and very adult philosophy.
Yeah.
And it looked like, so when that movie was coming out, I was one of those people going, who's this for? Besides 8-year-old girls, which is, it's okay for a movie to be for 8-year-old girls, right? But like, is this for anyone else? Like, I don't get it. I don't get it at all. And then I watched that first trailer and I was like, oh, this movie's for me. Like it's this is literally for me. And like, I was so excited, to see this movie. I was really over the moon about it. I went and saw Oppenheimer first because Christopher Nolan is always the priority, right? Yeah, you always go to Christopher Nolan movies first. You might die the next day. You know what I mean? You got to see that movie. You know what I mean? So I saw Oppenheimer first, but then the following day I saw Barbie, and it was just disappointing, man. It didn't really wrestle with any of those adult concepts. It wasn't really deep and philosophical in the way that it promised that it would be. The script really isn't that good. Like, the story's not that good. Because if you look, like, this movie got rave reviews.
Yeah.
It's got tons of praise. It's not that well done. Like, it's not that good of a movie. Like, the script just isn't that good. The story isn't that good. And it presents itself as this, like, sort of like, oh, we're going to tell this this sort of educational feminist story, and because it hints at that, what it was like to create a women's product back in the 1950s, and like what being a woman in society has been like and how it's changed over the last 70 years.
Yeah.
And it hints at having like some very like sort of deep and interesting things to say there, and then it just doesn't. Yeah. And then it just does like, boys are yucky and it's fun to be a girl, woo, and you're like, oh, okay, like I thought we were actually gonna like wrestle with some demons here and like, you know what I mean, tell an interesting story, and we never did. They frame it like the Mattel CEOs are gonna be like these big bad villains, and then they totally softball those guys. They totally let them off the hook. They don't actually live up to that at all. And
yeah, that's kind of the thing that I've heard is that and I mean this is a problem when you are trying to market something to 8-year-old girls and adults all at the same time. You can't. It's not to say you can't, but it is a very hard thing to make that work and toe that line, just right. But from my understanding is that it does deal with a lot of gender politics, but it doesn't. like what you said, it lets people off the hook
way off the hook, man. Way
without
off the hook. Like, it pretends like it's going to talk about gender politics, and then it totally just is like, it's just so lightweight. You know what I mean? It's so weak and like sort of like appeasing and inoffensive and like just kind of, and it just has nothing to actually say.
Yeah.
And there are these scenes in the movie where the filmmaker is clearly trying to make a very specific point about her experience as being a woman, and she just has the characters literally look at the camera and say it. Like, they talk directly at Johnny, this happens more than once in the film, where a character looks right at the camera and then just explains how she feels about something. And it's like, that's not clever filmmaking, people. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I do think this movie could have been done in a way that works. Like, I think you can tell an all ages story with social themes that works. I think you can do it. Pixar does it all the damn time.
Hey, Pixar is pretty masterful at that, as a matter of fact.
It's something that can be done, and they just didn't achieve it, in my opinion. And I think all of the praise that it got is kind of wild. And I think that there's good things to take away from it. I think it's great that it made $1.4 billion, and we know that there's going to be a market for movies for women, movies by women. Like, that's awesome.
Yes.
But this particular movie did not do it for me. And frankly, the best parts of the movie were Ryan Gosling and Simu Liu.
Yeah.
The two Kens, those guys are having the time of their lives, and it's literally the best part of the movie.
Yeah, I heard that they, kind of steal the show, which is
100%
really ironic, unfortunately, for a movie that is, for lack of a better phrase, about girl power, which, that's, I'm with you there. Like, it was exciting to see that, and to have, someone as pretty, like, humble and all around nice, from everything that I've heard, like Margot Robbie be kind of the face of that. Like, hey, maybe they'll get it right in the sequel, huh?
We'll see.
All right. Well, my number 4 is another film that I knew very little about going into it. It is a movie called Cobweb, and I think right now you can find it on, what did I watch it on? I think I watched it on Hulu. So you can find it on Hulu if you are interested at all in checking this bad boy out. But it deals with a child that begins hearing voices in his wall, and his parents that seem really nice up front begin being very dismissive of his concerns about the voices in the wall, and they eventually turn fairly hostile toward the child and anybody trying to intervene. And to say anything more than that would be spoilerish. This film has a lot going for it. Their performances are really good. It has, forgive me, let me pull this up really quick because I'm not going to remember certain people's names. Okay. It's got Anthony Starr of The Boys fame. He plays Homelander, and Lizzie Kaplan, who I really, really, really like. Viewers would know her from Masters of Sex. Gosh, what other? She's in Mean Girls. I'm trying to think of like general stuff that she's in. She's also been in Smallville. Anyways, I really like Lizzie Kaplan. I think she's a very compelling actress. And the story.
I'm sorry. Who did she play in Smallville? Do you know?
She was.
I'm just trying to place her.
She was a villainous character in like one of the earlier seasons, probably just like a one-off. Let me see. Oh, she's in Cloverfield. Duh.
Oh, okay.
The one that explodes.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, yeah. She's great.
Yeah, and I mean she's been in a million other things too, and that's why I'm like fucking feeling like shit that I
right.
All the things that she's in, because she's
very good.
She's a great character actress.
Mm-hmm.
And she does really, really good in this movie, as does Anthony Starr. He brings that like intimidation factor that he has as Homelander, that quiet, just like I will ruin your life sort of vibe. And the story, dude, I will tell you, fucking 75% of this movie I was in.
Okay.
And in the last 25%, it's not that it's bad, it just doesn't work with the other 75% of the movie.
Oh, I hate it when that happens.
Unfortunate, because there's some really interesting stuff that happens in that last 25%. Just feels very, very discombobulated from the rest of the film. That being said, I think it's worth checking out. I think it is kind of a perplexing film. And it's just kind of like a little bit of a head scratcher, but there's a lot to like in the movie. So I know a lot of people that do really like this movie. That's why I say I think it is kind of worth checking out if the concept sounds good to you. But yeah, the last part of that movie, and then just kind of like the finale of it all was just kind of like meh to me. And yeah, it's a bummer because it takes place during Halloween. Also has that Halloween aesthetic. Like their backyard is just like filled to the brim with fucking pumpkins and shit. So
you're actually making me a little bit interested in watching this movie. So.
I do think it's worth checking out. Like it being on my disappointments list is don't take this particular film like as like a no-go. It just didn't quite work for me. So that's all I'll say about that. Definitely, I do think it's worth checking out because there's some interesting stuff going on in that picture for sure. Kalen, I'd love for you to watch it and get back to me and just see if I'm off base with it. Celeste watched it with me too, and I think we both kind of like, what the fuck just happened? So
okay. I'll put it on the list for sure.
Cool. All right. Well, it's like all of my bads so far, I've been fairly nice to.
I've been pretty good.
Let's keep that niceness rolling. Hit me with the fourth one on your good list.
So the next one on my good list, and I'm looking at the order of my lists. So considering what my next good one is, and then what my next bad one is, I'm really gonna make some enemies here, and I'm okay with that.
Let's go.
So the next one on my good list is another case, I think, of groupthink and narrative affecting the way people talk about a movie, rather than the actual content of the movie. And that is The Flash. What'd you say?
I know what this one is.
That's right. It's The Flash.
Yes.
The Flash. There's a narrative, if you go about the world and the internet talking to people about The Flash, amongst people that are interested in movie narratives, there's a narrative that it's a bad movie, which is funny because if you just talk to like the average person, they don't see it that way. But there's a narrative around this movie that it's this bad movie, and yeah, it's not. It's a movie with very silly parts. Mm-hmm. Like it goes full Looney Tunes and slapstick in places on purpose.
Yeah.
And there are some interesting VFX choices that they make, and there are some plainly sort of shoddy VFX. I don't think that's a good reason to hate a movie, personally. I think that's like a weird reason to discount a movie, in my opinion. And I think that you lack imagination if you completely write something off for like a bad VFX scene. Like I just think that's weird and dumb. And I guess you can't go back and watch like old Star Wars or Star Trek or whatever because the VFX aren't exactly what you expect it to be right now today.
Well,
but
maybe not bad, but like maybe Mortal Kombat 2, like you don't go back to because the VFX are so bad,
Yeah, but you don't go back to Mortal Kombat 2 because it sucks. Because like I'll go back to Mortal Kombat 1 and it's still pretty entertaining.
Yeah, it's true.
I'm being serious right now. I can't think of a single movie that I would not go back to because the VFX aren't good enough.
Yeah,
if it's a good movie, it's a good movie.
I agree. I actually have watched a guilty pleasure of mine that will be nameless for the time being, but that Celeste walked in and she's just like, she walked in on me 2 different times because I watched it one day and then finished it the next day, and like both times she walked in on it, she's like shaking her head, smiling. She's like, I don't know why you watched this movie.
What movie is that?
I'll talk about it.
Oh, okay.
It'll make more sense later, but okay. It is a movie that definitely the effects might not hold up as well today, but I still fucking love the shit out of it. So I agree with you 100%.
Yeah, I just don't believe in that. Like, anything with like CGI from like a certain, like from like the 90s or whatever, the CGI is bad by today's standard, or like just things that have lower budgets. Even like a movie we're going to talk about later that we might have as our number one has some CGI shots that wouldn't be considered good if it was a big budget American movie.
True.
And I don't give a shit. So anyway, the point though is that with this movie, the core story about a boy and his mother and making decisions and growing up and dealing with the consequences of life is actually a really good core emotional story. The movie is funny as hell. Ezra Miller puts on a great performance against themselves.
Yes.
Michael Keaton's in it, and he's awesome no matter what he's doing, whether he's phoning it in or not. Sasha Calle is awesome as Supergirl. And the movie is a fucking blast. It was the most fun I had at the movie theater this entire year until I went and saw something yesterday that we'll talk about later. But up to that, it had been literally the most fun I had at the movies and the happiest I had been walking out of a movie the entire year. It makes a very cool choice in the third act, in the climax of the third act, that most superhero movies do not have the balls to make. And yeah, silly, wacky, and flawed, but a dope movie, The Flash.
All right, I'm gonna let you tag me in here. I agree with like every single thing you said. Leading up to Father's Day weekend, I believe, because it was my one thing that I told Celeste. I was like, I don't care about anything. I just want to go watch Michael Keaton be Batman one fucking time. Because in my mind, like, had it done well, it wouldn't have been one last fucking time, but
it did not do well.
Kind of assumed that it was just going to be a cameo, and then we found out after the fact that, like, had it done well, he would have popped back in for more stuff. But I'm okay with what I got because it was fucking worth the price of admission to see him be Batman again, as far as I was concerned. So that right there was everything I wanted from the movie, and I got so much more out of it. I laughed quite a bit throughout the movie. That being said, I did not laugh nearly as hard as my wife. I don't know. I've only heard her laugh this hard a handful of times in our time together, but the part where the Flash tries to run and he doesn't have his power, that woman fucking cackled for 60 seconds straight.
Because it's funny.
It was very, very funny. But I stopped laughing at that and started laughing at her because she was laughing so hard. I might take a little bit of issue with putting a baby in a microwave, but that's a character choice. That's not, dude, you get multiple Batmans in that movie, which awesome. I know people really, really take issue with certain cameos of certain people that might not be alive anymore, and people really had an issue with that. And I can appreciate that. That being said, when I was watching it, I thought it was really fucking cool. And I really have not been so impressed with the ending of a superhero movie and probably since like Endgame. By no means am I saying that The Flash compares to that, but so many superhero movies these days do the exact same fucking thing all the time.
And oftentimes don't do it well.
And oftentimes do not do it well. So much so that superhero movies, which used to be my favorite types of action movies, have just really lost a lot of their luster for me. That being said, I was so impressed with the choice, and really, like, you want to talk about horror movies, but the villain in that movie, and when you find out who he is and what happened to him, it's really unsettling and unnerving in a lot of ways, and really kind of like shook me. Like, I thought about that the rest of the day. And I thought it was so clever and such good storytelling. Yeah, man. Again, like we touched on a little bit, and I wish I could say more without, but it would be spoiler territory. I just love that the third act of that film so much. I think it's so smart. So I hear you. I think that's a great pick. Like if I was doing like a list of like non-horror movies, like that would be on my list. I remember just like same thing. I walked out of the theater. I was like, man, that was a fucking cool movie, man. That was everything I wanted from it. And it was like then I was like, fuck, man. Fucking DCEU is dead. So
that's right. It's gone. And it's gone.
All right. Speaking of the most fun that I had at the theater this past year, this is a movie that I did not think we were going to get. And I went and saw it by myself. It was a time when I was trying to drink a little bit less. And so usually when I go to a movie, I go with my wife or I Uber, and there's usually some sort of alcohol involved because I like going to the movies and drinking. It's just two of my favorite things in the world. And a lot of times they make the movies more fun. I went to this movie, sat in it by myself. Nobody else watched it with me. And I was sober, and it was the most fun I had at the movies this past year. So I think that says a lot about how much fun I think this movie is. And it is The Meg 2, The Trench. Now, you saw the original with me when we were in Las Vegas.
We were in Vegas for your bachelor party.
That was a movie that I thought was pretty fun, but not nearly as fun and dumb as it should have been, or as it was marketed as. Like, I felt like they dipped their toe in silliness, but they were trying to still play it straight, and I think it very much worked to its detriment. The Meg 2 just goes full bonkers in every way, shape, and form, and is just so much better for it.
Yeah.
It's so over the top, but the sharks are actually scary in this one because the sharks are like they're present. Like so much of the time in the first one, you just see the shark in the distance. You just see its fin swimming around, and they're all on boats, and you're like, well, it's not attacking the boat, so what does it fucking matter, you know?
Right. Oh no, a fin in the distance.
But like they have these suits in the Meg 2 where they can like walk underwater on ground and everything. So preposterous, but like, you know, that leads to some cool fucking shenanigans. And there's like 3 different sharks. There's a giant fucking octopus. There's these little dinosaur things that can go in the water and go on land. So by the time the finale comes around, there's so much shit going on, and Jason Statham is still like fighting giant sharks, and it's just so silly and so much fun. And I just watched the whole thing with a big ass fucking smile on my face the whole time. It was just such a blast in all the best ways. So yeah, God, it was such a good time at the movies. It's like I can't recommend it. You know, perfect like get together movie, something that you could throw on with a group of friends, and at any given point in time, you look up at the TV and go, "What the fuck is going on over there?"
Nice.
So yeah, that's Meg 2, The Trench for me, man. I had a blast with that movie. Hoy. All right, keeping it moving on. What is your third dislike?
All right, here's where I get to make some real enemies.
Oh,
my third most disappointing movie of the year is Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse.
Oh boy.
Yeah. And I'm just going to do a quick disclaimer here. I think this is an objectively good film.
Yes.
I think it's objectively a good film. But I think it is so absurdly overrated that it is difficult for me to even like process the way people talk about this movie. On the app, what's that app called where people rate movies? Letterboxd?
Letterboxd, yeah.
For a long time, it was the #1 movie of all time on Letterboxd. And it's not even the best movie in its own series. So that really kind of bothered me a little bit. Just to clarify, have you seen either of the Spider-Verse films?
I've seen the first one.
You have seen the first one.
And I had wanted to see this new one, but it was definitely like, oh, once it comes on to Netflix sort of a deal. And
okay,
I think it is on services now. And and by the time it got there, I just kind of heard, you know, like, yeah, it's really good, but also like what you're saying, it might not be as good as everyone says it is. And so I've just kind of like slowly lost interest.
It's good and it's totally worth watching, but it's just not the 10 out of 10 masterpiece that people are calling it. So I think the first movie, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, I think that is like a 9 out of 10 or 10 out of 10 type of film. I think it's one of the best superhero movies ever made. I think it's one of the best animated movies ever made. I think it's either the first or second best Spider-Man movie ever made. I think it's really special. I think it's a really special film.
Yeah.
And if you haven't seen it in a while, I would recommend that you go back and give it another rewatch, or maybe that's something we could watch together or something. I think that's a very special movie.
I remember watching it and being kind of, you know, just blown away because I was like, I'll watch the fucking animated Spider-Man.
The dumb animated bullshit movie, yeah.
No one will shut up about it, so I'll watch it. And then I remember being like, fuck.
Yeah, like, well, that was really good.
Funnily enough, the dentist that I take my son to, they had these TVs up in the you know, room where he would get his work done, and they would be like, what kind of movie do you want to watch? You want to watch this? Do you want to watch this? Do you want to watch Spider-Man? My kid Spider-Man. I'm like, fuck yeah, let's watch some Tobey Maguire. And then they throw on this one. I'm like, oh yeah.
You're like, that's not what I thought Spider-Man was.
But then I got to explain to my son, after the, 2-minute prologue or whatever, and we're dealing with, oh God, Miles Morales. My son's like, "Where's Spider-Man? Where's Spider-Man? Where's Spider-Man?" I'm like, "That's Spider-Man. He just needs to get his costume."
Yeah.
Where's Spider-Man? Where's Spider-Man? And then
hang tight, buddy.
Peter Parkers show up, and I'm like, "There's one." But we would be watching it, and we'd get 25% of the way through, and I'd be like, "Man, kid, are there any more cavities you can pull out? Because I'm watching this movie here." No, make some cavities. Just make some. I don't care. Whatever the bill is. I'm watching this.
That's right.
We got insurance. Anyway.
So when this movie was coming out, I was keeping my expectations very low.
Yeah.
Because catching lightning in a bottle twice is simply difficult to do.
Yeah.
Like any time I think a movie is just capital G great, I don't go into the sequel expecting it to be just as good. Because it simply usually is not. Because even the best creative in the world can't just make a solid gold hit after solid gold hit after solid gold hit. You just can't do it, right? Yeah. You have ups and downs. So I was keeping my expectations at bay, and then the reviews hit, and I'm reading that it's better than the first one somehow, and that this film is art, and that this is the greatest movie ever made, and
it in check after that. Yeah.
Many reviews talking specifically about somehow they made a better movie than the first one. Somehow it's better. I can't believe they pulled it off, but somehow it's better. So I'm going into this movie going, okay, this is going to be an all-time banger. Like all right, here we go. And like the script is sloppy. And the characterization of several characters is poor. And the dialogue is kind of bad in multiple places. And like this actual story arc is like kind of weak and wonky and doesn't really pay off the way it should. And it's just, and I'm speaking strictly about story here, not visuals. It's just not anywhere near the first one. Like the first one is a tight, perfect hero's journey where all of the characters, all of their motivations make sense, all of their dialogue makes sense, all of their character arcs make sense, everything makes sense, and it has the most satisfying, perfect conclusion. This movie is just slow and rickety and just nothing like that. It's just not the same thing. And so it's just wild to me to hear everyone describe it as like the greatest film ever made. There are both of the main character and another main character's fathers are police officers in this.
Mm-hmm.
And their cop dads have some whack lines that are like really bad, that are like, who thought that was a good idea to put that in the movie?
Mm-hmm.
And some of the characterization of some of these characters who are established characters, Peter Parker's an established character. Gwen Stacy's an established character. Some of their motivations and some of their behavior is just like, I'm just like, how was there no one in the room going, this is a bad idea?
Yeah.
And it's a 2.5 hour movie that feels like it takes an hour to get started and feels like a 3 hour movie. And then it ends on with
tanker, right?
Not a spoiler here. This has been talked about a lot online and just in the world. It ends on a cliffhanger that's not like, you can do a cliffhanger that's also the ending of a movie. Like, to stay in the superhero realm, Infinity War is a cliffhanger, but you also have a satisfying conclusion to that film.
Yeah.
There's no satisfying conclusion to this film. It's literally just next time on Across the Spider-Verse. Mm. So what ultimately has beautiful visuals and good characters and is objectively a good film is much more of like a 7.5 or 8 out of 10 type of movie than the 10 out of 10 type of movie that it's billed as. And it's bizarre to me that no one talks about the myriad flaws in this film. And I, for the record, I love Lord and Miller. I think those guys are geniuses, and I am looking forward to the third movie.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Hey, I mean, I get it. There's a movie on our list that we're gonna get to. We're gonna make lots of enemies with because I think
Oh, we sure are.
I think anybody who yeah, but same thing that there's an astounding amount of hype for something that
Doesn't deliver.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So anyways, I feel you. Well, I'm just gonna take that burden off your back and just shit on a movie. Absolutely shit on a movie here for a minute, okay? So,
Okay, let's
um,
go.
and if the 2 minutes of me shitting on it is not enough for you, then please go hop on over to the Johnny Jaws cast and hear Brian and I shit on it for like 2+ hours. The film is The Black Demon. Stars Josh Lucas of Ford versus Ferrari fame and Sweet Home Alabama fame. But it deals with a family who the father is works for an oil company and he's out checking oil. What are they? Are they called rigs or refineries? What are they called when they're out in the ocean? Like what is
Oil
that?
rigs.
Oil rig. Okay. He's out checking an oil rig that his company owns. He's like an inspector, and while he's out there, a giant megalodon begins attacking said oil rig and is supposedly brought on by the people of the coastal town where the oil rig sits off from as a way to punish the oil company. So, let me preface this by saying I love the concept of this story.
Mm-hmm.
I have said this to a lot of people in person when I talk about this movie and on the podcast with Brian that I have long wanted to do some sort of horror related story on an oil rig because I think there's for lack of a better phrase here, pardon the pun, there's a lot to be mined from that.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Because you can do a lot of aquatic horror from that, and then you can also do some really smart social, subtext in there too. Um, the subtext of this film really is not that at all. It's just text and very, very bad text. The acting in this film is very, very rough. And that's just from the supporting cast. The lead, Josh Lucas, who is an actual actor acting in Hollywood, doing big budget films, and has delivered fine, good performances. Somebody that I genuinely like to watch in a lot of movies. He is so not good in this movie to where it became the most entertaining part of the film was watching how he's acting in a different movie from everybody else. Everybody else is working within the realms of the script. They can't rise above the material, so that's not their fault.
Mm-hmm.
But they're all acting in the same movie. He is acting in a completely different movie and is so over the top.
I love it when that happens.
It's like I said, it was the most entertaining part of the film because this film throws its villainous, aquatic monster to the side in favor of, fucking a family soap opera, and it's incredibly boring. There are a few bright spots. Anytime the shark's there, it's fucking awesome. It's fucking cool. The shark actually looks pretty good given the budget. And again, we only see a little bit of it, but when it attacks, it's fucking hardcore. And there is 2 shots at the very end of the movie that are legitimately terrifying if you are afraid of sharks and the ocean. Um, but man, it was just like, I, you know, I knew it wasn't going to be great, but I just did not expect it to be as bad as it was. And like I said, if a movie's just boring, that's really the worst thing that a movie can be. And while this one is not quite as boring to me as what's going to be the next one on my bad list, it's still just dragged. And if I'm bored by a shark movie, that's not good. So
Nope. Not a big vote of confidence.
And I think the most disappointing thing is that they really do have a solid concept there. Like, in better, more capable hands, this is a fucking cool movie. So, yeah, it's a bummer. And what the fuck are you gonna do?
All right.
All right, hit me with another good one, buddy.
Bam. The next one on my good list was my favorite horror movie last year. And that is a movie that when I first heard that it was in production, I wasn't actually that excited.
Mm-hmm.
And my first bit of excitement came when I found out that the new Warner Brothers CEO had said, "What are you talking about? That's a streaming movie. We need to release that in theaters." Mm-hmm. That was when I went, "Oh, really?" And that's Evil Dead Rise.
Yeah, that's like the one good thing David Zaslav did was put that thing in
theaters. Right. He was like, "I'm going to delete like 20 movies, but put that one in theaters."
Yeah. Yeah. Please take it away. Sorry, I didn't mean to.
No, that's okay. That's okay. So I'm a big fan of the original Evil Dead trilogy. I'm a big fan of Sam Raimi. Anyone who listens to this podcast probably knows that. But I love the original trilogy. I love I really love Evil Dead and the Evil Dead 2.
Yeah.
Those movies are fantastic, and I love them. And I don't like the 2013 Fede Alvarez movie as much, but the horror aspects of that movie are really good. Like, the scary stuff is really good. And so I wasn't sure where I was at with this. You know what I mean? I'm like, well, I love the originals, and like that movie has things that I like about it, but do I need more Evil Dead in my life? Like, are new filmmakers taking on new Evil Dead stories what I really need? And then I really liked this movie. I just really thought this movie was well written and very well performed by the cast. I really cared about all these characters. Like, I really cared and felt bad when bad things happened to these characters. I thought the mother of the family her performance was just phenomenal. I thought the Deadites were scary and creepy, and not just the shocking humor of not just like the shocking horror of like bad things happening to people, but just like the behavior of the Deadites, I thought was just creepy and scary. And I thought everyone performance-wise did a really good job. I thought the community of neighbors had done a really good job. And it just felt to me like this movie was punching above its weight. Like it shouldn't have been as good as it was to me. I expect kind of no-name filmmakers doing a legacy sequel to a B-movie franchise to just not make that great of a movie. And I thought this was a really awesome movie. Probably my favorite horror movie last year. I mean, I didn't personally have a great horror year last year. But this movie really delivered for me. And I walked out of the theater from this movie very happy and ready for more sort of Evil Dead takes. I love the opening. Man, that the opening of this movie and that the title crawl.
Yeah.
Whew. Some bad stuff. Yeah, I really like this movie. And I was pretty much impressed with it all the way around. A couple of things in the third act lost me a little. but not enough to bring down the whole project, in my opinion.
Yeah, this is one that I mentioned earlier was one that I went into very, very excited for. Insanely excited. I fucking love every entry of the Evil Dead franchise. I am actually an insanely big fan of the 2013 remake. I fucking love how vicious that movie is. I take some serious issue with some dialogue and certain performance aspects of it, but as just like a full blown horror movie, like I think it's really just nonstop gut wrenching. So there's no way for me to keep my expectations in check with this. It just wasn't there. Yeah. Plus, I really loved the trailer that they released. Thought that was really made it look really cool. And when I went and saw the movie, I was admittedly disappointed. There are a number of things that I felt might have been unnecessary to the story that, I felt like they could have done differently, moved the story a little bit faster in the first, 25% of the movie. My big gripe with the film, and is still something that I wish they might have tweaked around a little bit, is that they do make a big fuss about it being in a high-rise apartment building, yet we have very little high-rise apartment building related obstacles. I think what I really wanted from this film was, you've seen Dread, right? We might have talked about this. I love in Dread how they're working up to get to the top level, and every level that they go on, there's some sort of thing that they have to deal with in order to get to the next level. And I was really, really hoping that was going to be the case for Evil Dead Rise, just in the reverse. They have to go down, and every level that they go down, they have another obstacle, whether it be, faulty, elevator or staircase missing, or,
things of that nature did happen in the movie.
Indeed. But, to the degree that it's spaced out and it's an obstacle that you have to manage in order to keep that train a rolling, and you would have like different deadites that you would encounter, and what I thought would be a great bit is that I know that, but my problem with it all is that it's all very centered in one apartment building.
I hear what you're saying. I really want to give you my thoughts on what you're saying here. Because like what you're describing, there's nothing wrong with what you're describing here, but like you're describing a video game, and you're describing a very specific movie that this movie is not trying to be in any way. And like I just feel like it's such an unfair criticism. Like if I went to what's a movie everyone's seen? Fight Club. If I go to Fight Club and I come out of Fight Club like, oh, you know what? There wasn't enough fist fighting and overcoming better opponents and blood sport, and there weren't enough jumping back kicks, and there should have been an Asian guy with a very weird kung fu style that everyone was afraid of, and he killed everybody. And you know what I mean? And it's like, okay, well, like you're describing a movie that might be pretty cool, but it's not what this movie was doing at all.
Well, no, I understand that. I mean, I understand that, but I mean, what are we doing here? We're talking about, reasons why, X, Y, and Z, certain films might not have worked for us.
Sure.
Now, all of that said, that's what I had in my mind when I saw the film.
Right.
And I like I said, admittedly, I still want to see that film. I think that's a really cool movie. Now, Upon my second watch of the film, I liked it much, much more because my expectations were in check. I knew what I was in for, and I wasn't being like, oh, well, they didn't do this. The cheese grater that they made a big old fuss about is in literally 2 seconds of film.
Mm-hmm.
Boom, done. And yet it is an insanely large part of their marketing campaign. I really like. I think her name's Lily Collins. I believe that's the actress.
I don't want to get her name wrong.
Yeah, I don't want to. I feel like I might I have messed that up. Hold on. Give me a second here. But people, none of these people are the person that. Okay, Lily Sullivan. Sorry, Lily Collins.
Lily Sullivan. Yeah, she's great.
She's freaking badass, man. Super great character that she played. And I agree. Alyssa Sutherland is the actress that plays the mom. Like, both of them are just like fucking killing it. And something that I talked about in my review, this movie's really fucking sad because when you think about it, it's like a aunt having to kill like her sister and her niece and nephew and all to protect her other niece, and it's just really, really depressing when you kind of put it in those terms. And I always think about like the aftermath of these movies. Are like, how do you explain like how like your sister's now dead?
You would be very messed up for the rest of your life.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I think about many of these people. I'm like, yeah, you're fucked, man. You might have survived tonight, but you're fucked.
Yeah, you're gonna develop some drug addictions here.
But it is a movie that I really enjoyed. Really enjoyed that second rewatch, and I'm
glad to hear that.
Something that I'm very much looking forward to going back to. And I really got to get the hard copy. I was just super disappointed. Like, they had like no bonus features whatsoever. Like, absolutely zero. I'm like, dude, you cannot even give me like a director's commentary. Come on, fuck.
Yeah, it's something I miss about the older days of DVDs and Blu-rays, was we used to really get hooked up with like a lot of bonus content, and they're moving away from that now with streaming.
I know for like they have different like companies now, like Scream Factory and like Arrow Video and like Vinegar Syndrome and stuff like that. These companies that like put together like these older releases, and then they go through and they interview like whatever members of the cast are still alive, like a lot of the cheesy 80s horror movies and stuff like that, and put together these really beautiful Blu-rays. And I'm like, all right, cool. I think it's time you guys start picking up some newer content too, because the newer movies are the ones that are getting the shaft these days. And I'm sure there's all this behind the scenes stuff, all this, especially in this digital age where everything's recorded and whatnot. There's got to be so much material to.
Yep. It's got to be a lot of behind the scenes.
Anyhow.
A final word on the Evil Dead there. And actually, I think we caught on to something there that I think, at least with regards to horror, kind of illustrates a little bit of the difference about what you and I sort of gravitate towards as fans, as viewers, right? Because you're a very big fan of that Fede Alvarez movie, because of how hard it goes. But like when I watch that movie, I can't get over the fact that it feels like, and this is no diss on Fede Alvarez. I don't know the guy. Maybe his Alien movie is going to be great. Like, I got nothing against him.
I hope
but
so.
Like, huh?
I said I hope so.
I hope so. But like for me, the writing and acting in that movie feels like a random episode of CW television. Yeah. And when I watched The Evil Dead Rise, I didn't think about, what the high rise meant. I just knew that it was in a high rise. I just knew that it was an Evil Dead movie. I met it on its own terms. And I think that like the writing and the acting in that movie are several levels above. Like, I don't think as like, if you're just comparing them as films, I don't even think they're very comparable. Whereas I can definitely see your perspective on like, well, these are horror movies and this one goes way harder. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I hear what you're saying. I do, and I mean that's like I said, that's my biggest gripe is that
Mhm.
like there's there are literal moments in the Fede Alvarez one where like a guy is talking to his girlfriend, and this is like in moments of like dire stress,
Yep.
like if you were talking to your better half and things were stressful and people were being murdered and bleeding to death, would you be
Mhm.
like, baby, go get some hot water? No. You'd be like,
Right.
Sandy, go get some fucking hot water. Like you would call her by her name. You
Right.
wouldn't be like, baby, baby,
Yeah.
baby, baby. Like one of the characters, like that is like how he refers to his girlfriend
The
all
whole
the
way
time.
through.
That
Yeah.
is not how people talk, Fede.
Right. It's true.
But anyways, I digress. I still think the Evil Dead franchise doesn't have any real chinks in its armor overall. Like I even after my first watch of Evil Dead Rise, I think it's still got like a 7 or 8. It wasn't like it got a bad
They're
rating.
all a banger on some level, right?
Yeah, exactly. They
Yeah.
all are pretty awesome in their own right in one way, shape, or form. So
Yeah, I agree.
um all right. That was your number 3, right? Is that where we're at? We're at 3.
Yes, sir.
All right. So this is pretty much everything from here on out is just like pure perfection for me. Um, and this is a movie that God has haunted me for God fucking the better part of like 20 years now. And I mean that because the original trailer was released in, what was it, 2007's Grindhouse?
Oh, yes.
uh,
Well,
Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving.
Man, just I I love holiday horror films so much. I love holiday slashers more than anything. Any holiday themed slasher, I am just there for. I mean, you know, I feel like Halloween ones maybe a dime a dozen, but God, I love Christmas slashers so much. Like My Bloody Valentine, I think is so fucking great, and there are just so few and far in between. Like when
Yeah,
it comes
they don't
to
make a lot of them.
um like Thanksgiving ones in particular. There's not a lot of Thanksgiving related horror like at all, let alone legitimately good Thanksgiving horror. And this movie just what a so much fun. Um it feels like a true blue return to like 80s slashers. Like it's got that small town element to it. Um and of course the small town has like goes really hard for whatever the specific holiday of the horror movie is, and they go really hard for Thanksgiving. They have their Thanksgiving Day parade. It's
Hmm.
in I think it's in Plymouth, Massachusetts is the small town. So um and they have their themed killer with the John Carver pilgrim get up.
Hmm.
um Fucking great, man. The kills are savage. The cast is really, really likable. One of the things that like almost goes against the grain for slashers is like the group of kids, like even the shitty ones, like are still like really charming and charismatic to where you're like, all right, well, I see why all these people hang out. Like a lot of times in the 80s slashers, you're like, why is the nice girl hanging out with like these fucking assholes that just treat everyone like shit? And in this movie,
I
it
guess we went to different high schools, brother.
yeah, I guess so. I was a nerd in high school, so like I was not friends with the popular kids at
Yeah,
all.
we had different experiences of high school.
Um, but yeah, man, I really feel like Eli Roth just like I've enjoyed a number of his films. I think Cabin Fever's fun, and his Hostel movies are pretty wild, but cool movies. A couple of his other movies I'm kind of wishy-washy on, but the man just like knows horror, like just knows the genre front to back, and it's really impressive to see him just flex those muscles in this. Like everything is like just as again as like a student of 80s slashers, basically. Like that's my fucking church. Like I eat that shit up. Like bad, good, and everything in between. Like I love 80s slashers, and this is just pulled straight from that era. So I'm like in love with it. Can't wait to rewatch it. I think they're releasing it on Blu-ray at the end of this month. Probably about when this episode will drop, actually. So
Nice.
I'm gonna buy it and say fuck wait until Thanksgiving to watch it again, because I'm really excited to check it out. I thought it was great. So has the right tone of like fun, like silly, like camp, like a slasher of that era would, but also manages to just be, take itself seriously in just the right way that you believe the characters and the world that they live in. So I think it's a very, very well balanced, good slasher movie, and I recommend it.
I love me a good slasher. This is another one from your list that I am planning to see. I thought that it looked kind of dumb in the trailers, but also, a dumb slasher can be a very good time. So I wasn't like totally off on it, but it wasn't like, let me go out of my way during this very busy time to go catch this in theaters.
Yeah.
But you liked it, and like a lot of people whose opinions I value liked it.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna look forward to watching this one at home.
Yeah, like I said, if you go into it knowing, don't take it too seriously. Go into it for a fun time, because
it's a B movie slasher.
Yeah, that's what it is. It's I
Right.
mean, just a good silly time for adults. Like it does kind of work in that realm of like a Friday the 13th, where you're going to watch these people be killed and be entertained by it. Like they're not, trying to make you feel bad about it. It's not like watching like fucking one of the things about that I really like about like Rob Zombie's Halloween movies is that there's no flair in that, just people being hacked up like repeatedly and to the point where you don't want to watch anymore. And that's what Rob Zombie's, he's pointing the finger at the audience, being like, yeah, this is what you came for. Enjoy watching people literally be murdered. It's not that. It is like full blown entertainment, people being thrown in ovens and being served with their legs up like they're fucking turkeys and shit like that. It's great.
Right on.
Hi. Speaking of turkeys, hit me with your number 2 on your bad list, buddy.
Oof. Number 2 on my bad list is. So let me get my notes open again here. Oh yeah. So this is another one that I think you might even be able to file under objectively good film, and I'm curious if you've seen it, if you have thoughts on it. It is Beau is Afraid.
This is one I have not seen, actually.
Okay.
One of the few. I do believe it qualifies as horror.
Debatably, yeah.
Yeah, and I have really liked Ari Aster's 2 previous outings, but I wasn't really sold on the trailer. It looked a little too how do I say it? Just kind of I don't typically like movies where the character is like constantly questioning their own reality, and I feel like that is what this movie is. So I haven't watched it yet, but I've heard both. I've heard it's good, or you either love it or you hate it, basically.
Okay. Well, get ready for the third opinion here. I think that Ari Aster is a unique talent. I think that he's special. But I think that he has certain instincts that do not serve him well.
Mm-hmm.
I think that, and this is a little bit hard to explain, so please bear with me while I try and sort of grind through this.
Yeah.
You know how with anything in life, you can learn a lesson and you can try a strategy, but then that strategy can be overdone. So like, for example, you might get into weightlifting when you're young and you might lift weights and you might go, oh, wait a minute. Like I'm stronger. Like doing chores is easier. Like I'm not out of breath when I do stuff. Like men treat me with more respect. Women like me more. This is amazing. This is the best thing I've ever done. I'm lifting weights now. Right. But then you can take like something that does a good thing for you and go too far with it. So you get to the point where you're like, oh, my car broke down. Well, I lift weights. I'm just going to carry it to home. You're like, no, that doesn't it doesn't solve that problem. Like this solves certain problems. It doesn't solve every problem.
Yeah.
Ari Aster is a hipster.
Mm-hmm.
And he's someone who is desperate to be different and get attention for being different. And I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with that. I'm a hipster, like whatever. There's nothing wrong with being different, with being alternative, with having differing views or opinions or liking things that are weird. I'm sitting here talking about Ari Aster movies, so obviously I like shit that's weird, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But I think that his instinct to be different, I think he just drives it way too far to the point where he drives the bus right off a cliff. And in this movie, and I don't mean like he does that all the time, but I mean like in this movie, he drives that bus off the cliff. Yeah. And it's a damn shame because I think he was on his way to a great movie here. This is kind of like a 5-act film. I think it's over 3 hours.
Jesus.
It's kind of a 5-act film. And if it had ended right at the end of the 4th act, I would have said I love this movie. Like if it had ended at 2 hours and 25 minutes, I would have been like, what a cool movie. Loved that movie. And then in the 5th act, he just seemingly intentionally, to me, he just destroys all the good work he did and all the goodwill he created. And it's like he draws a beautiful piece and then crumples it up, throws it in the trash and lights it on fire. And that's the 5th act of the movie for me personally. Like it's flabbergasting because I'm like, this guy is so good. He's so talented. He's a good writer. I think he's almost like a master filmmaker. Like I think Hereditary is one of the most impressive filmmaking debuts I've ever seen in my entire life. Like who shows that kind of skill and craftsmanship in their first feature film?
Yeah.
I can't think of anybody, you know? And in this movie, and he's got all the pieces, man. He's got the cast. He's got a very cool story happening. And then he does some weird stuff, man, in that last act that just feels like it's for the sake of being weird. It feels like it's for the sake of creating outrage. It feels like it's for the sake of being the provocateur. Uh-huh. And then when the movie comes out and people don't like it, he's got his feelings hurt and he's crying foul. Like, well, why didn't you guys like my movie? You should have engaged with it the way like I wanted you to. And it's like, well, you know, you also have to engage with your audience on a certain level, you know what I mean, with where they are.
Yeah.
And it didn't feel like he did that. It felt like it felt to me like he intentionally tore something down and then he got his feelings hurt when people said, why did you tear that down? Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. And I think for the record, I think it's definitely worth watching. I actually get sad when I watch the trailer because when the trailer comes on, I still get pumped about the movie. And then I remember what happens and then I get sad.
Yeah, I feel like I gotta watch it just because I've heard so much about it. And I also like know very little about it too. Mm-hmm. I've just heard people's opinions on it.
Uh-huh.
I still know very little about the story and what goes on. So I am, and I mean, like fucking Joaquin Phoenix, like,
yep, he's the man.
Yeah. So I'm definitely interested in checking it out, and I feel like that's an easy sell to Celeste because she loved Hereditary and Midsommar so much. So to just sell her on an Ari Aster picture should be pretty easy to throw that on.
For sure. And I wouldn't be shocked if you liked it. I wouldn't be shocked if Celeste liked it.
Yeah.
I also wouldn't be shocked if you both completely fall right in line with where I landed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now I'm pretty curious actually. So, all right. I know I'm not going to get any flack from you from this, but and probably I don't know. There seems like there was plenty of horror fans that liked this one, but I watched this movie at the behest of our dear buddy Brian, who sent me the trailer. Was like, "What the fuck is this?" And I was like, "Well, it's basically like if the robots at Chuck E. Cheese came to life and started killing people." And he was like, "Yeah, that sounds awesome." I'm like, "Okay, we'll watch it together." Five Nights at Freddy's. That is based off of a really creepy video game, from what I hear, and my understanding is that the film got all of the things that made the video game creepy wrong. Basically, a security guard goes to watch over this abandoned pizza joint that has these robots in it, and the robots come to life and start potentially hurting people. At least that's the synopsis of the film. It's a long movie. I think it was at least 2 hours long. Let me confirm that here before I run my mouth too much. Okay, yeah, an hour and 49 minutes. So, and I was bored for every single one of those minutes. Yeah, terribly, just so dull. I there's not, with the exception of the appearance of Matthew Lillard, in a supporting role. I kept on looking over at Brian, being like, "What the fuck are we doing right now? Like, I don't even know. Like, there's nothing scary about this. There's nothing entertaining about this." And like, I remember hearing about this video game for years and years about how fucking scary it is, and I was like, when I kind of like would see things from it, I'm like, I don't have any idea how that could possibly be scary, and I still don't have any idea. So
yeah, I'm with you on that. It doesn't sound scary to me either. Like, I don't get the pitch.
Maybe if I had played the video game, so like, maybe I should shut the fuck up and play the video game, but I'm not going to do that because I'm sorry, I don't really play video games. I don't have any consoles or systems, nor do I care. All that said, I was curious to see if the film even could potentially, show any signs of what would make someone scared. And the film did very, very well. It did very, very, very well.
I saw it. It was a hit.
Yeah, it was released in theaters and on streaming at the same time. And as far as I can tell, it was the biggest success in those terms. Even more so than like Godzilla versus Kong, which was kind of like the first like really jumpstart movie thing back during COVID times. So this movie significantly outperformed that because, all the kids went and saw it. It's a PG-13 movie.
Right.
But yeah, it's so boring in so many ways. And there's a character in this that, I'll just say it's a security guard played by a fine actress that I've seen in other things, but like, it's not her fault. It's the writing that like this character, like one moment is like helping out the Josh Hutcherson character, and then is super nice from one moment, and then the next moment, like when he has like his sister there and he's babysitting her or whatever, like the security guard shows up and is like, "If you bring her here again, I'll shoot you," and shit like that. And just like the way that the character is so like unbelievably crazy and different. Every single scene that we see her in, I'm like, who the fuck is writing this person? Because they're not real. They're not a real human being. This character you've written. Have you never met people before in your life? Was this written by AI? What's going on? So yeah, dude, this probably like outright, like the least entertaining, like probably the worst movie I watched this year. Just like outright, like even worse than Black Demon, because Black Demon was at least had moments of like absolute like so bad that it's entertaining. This movie was just painfully boring from start to finish, and I did not like it.
Well, you touched on something there that I think is something that maybe the general audience doesn't know. And I'm switching to beer, by the way.
Hey, God bless.
Hazy IPA.
Yummy. I'm sipping on water now.
Ooh. Well, this time I'll be the one drinking. But
Atta baby.
As an actor, it's nigh impossible to overcome bad writing, bad directing, or bad editing.
Yeah.
Like an actor can only do what they can do. And if the script is shit, if the director is making you act stupid, if they cut you in a way that is bad, there's nothing you can do to So I think sometimes people come after actors for certain performances. And that I'm like, that wasn't really their fault. Like that was more.
That's what I say. Like when I say like an actor can't rise above the material, that means that like Leonardo DiCaprio can rise above the material because he is that good of an actor. Brad Pitt can rise above the material because he's that good of an actor. There are plenty of actors, and it is not their fault that they are not the greatest actor in the world.
Exactly.
They are given a job to do, and they do it. And the fact of the matter is that the people that are in the positions of creativity have not given them the tools to shine, basically.
Right. Well, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No. Please, by all means.
Well, it's so funny. You just made me think of something very specific where like a movie that I don't think is poorly written, but in Heat, there are lines that Al Pacino and Robert De Niro deliver that I'm just like, man, if anyone else was doing that, it wouldn't be that good.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It wouldn't be that good. But also, that's Robert De Niro and Al Pacino. You can't expect every actor in the world to just take a so-so or bad line and make it great. Like, not everyone can do it. Most people can't. And that even includes really great actors. Sometimes just can't do it.
I mean, yeah. I mean, that's like that movie is just filled to the brim with great actors. Even actors that like Tom Sizemore is fucking on fire in that movie, man.
Yeah.
He delivers like one of the best lines in that movie, which is, for me, the action is the juice. And no one gets away with just saying that line because what the fuck does that even mean? You know? But when Tom Sizemore says it, I'm like, fuck. Yeah, man. Let's get the juice. Like, let's go. Like, I fucking believe I know what he's saying in that moment. Had said that line, I would like, what the fuck does that mean? You know? But that is the caliber of a good actor giving a good performance. And it does, like, it can go both ways where like a really, really good actor just does not give a really good performance, you know?
Yep. Totally. 100%.
But all that said, like, the acting is not the issue in this film at all. Like, I think Josh Hutcherson does a very, very good job in the lead role, actually. He's never been anyone that I've really, kind of, not like disliked, but really kind of cared for one way or the other. And I thought he did a very good job in that role if I was going to, highlight something good. But, he can't save the fucking train wreck that is this movie.
Right on.
Yeah. Anyways, we said we weren't going to be mean, but
right.
I had to get a little mean with that one. Boy, all right, let's keep this train rolling, man, because we are, 2 hours into this thing, and we're still got some movies to talk about. So, where are we at? Gonna be your number 2 good movie.
Good movie. So, my number 2 good movie is the Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. Written and directed by James Gunn. And this movie pays off the Guardians of the Galaxy trilogy. It finishes the saga. It finishes the series. It pays off all of these characters' arcs. It's a one of the rare examples of the threequel actually being a good movie, or not a good movie, but kind of living up to the standard.
Yeah.
For me personally, the Guardians of the Galaxy movies are movies that mean a lot to me. Those are movies that just matter a lot to me. It's funny, we've talked about this a little bit. You didn't remember how much you liked the first one because when we talked about it, you said it was okay, and I'm like,
I thought about that conversation. We had quite a bit, actually. Anytime I feel a certain way about a movie, like I kind of bring that conversation into my brain to kind of make sure I'm giving everything the appropriate context.
So I love those movies. I think they are. I think in the blockbuster superhero action world, I think they are more heartfelt films. I think they have better emotional cores and stories than most of these movies. I think within the context of the MCU, and I like the MCU overall. I certainly, in the first 3 phases, I would say I absolutely adored the MCU.
Yeah.
But I think in many ways the Guardians films sort of stand apart and stand above. And to see this movie in 2023, 6 years after the last one finally come out, I feel like there was a lot of pressure on this movie to deliver. Obviously this filmmaker just got a very important position over at Warner Brothers. I feel like there was a lot of pressure on this movie, and I feel like story-wise, it was in a very odd place because the universe around it, a lot of weird stuff has happened.
Yeah.
Since the last one. So it had a tall order, and I think it filled it very nicely. It is not the easiest movie. It is hard to watch it at points. It is a little bit painful to watch at points. It's a little bit brutal in places, but it continues with the same strength of core emotional storytelling that the series had before, as well as like the humor that you've come to expect from these movies that's actually on point. And also like action sequences that feel like somebody was actually trying.
Yeah.
Which has been a problem lately with the MCU. Whereas in this movie, like a lot of MCU movies recently, I've been reading that like Marvel Studios will tell directors to not worry about the action sequences. Like they'll cover that. And then we get these very kind of bland and sort of lame action sequences. This was not that at all. These were clearly like James Gunn designed these action sequences. There's a lot of winks and nods at different kinds of movies that, are kind of influences on him. Everything from like 1970s action movies to like Old Boy, you can see like the influence in this movie.
Yeah, I heard about some sort of gravity or zero gravity, like hallway fight sort of sequence or something like that. That sounded pretty cool.
It's brilliant. It's excellent. But yeah, man, humor, heart, action, really good writing, really good storytelling, really strong performances. You have everyone from, Dave Bautista, and I mean, like, Vin Diesel plays a talking tree in this movie, and Bradley Cooper maybe gives one of his best career performances in this film as a talking raccoon that is CGI, like the great Bradley Cooper. Yeah, Zoe Saldana, Karen Gillan, everyone does a great job. Everyone delivers. The movie delivers. It delivers the goods. I don't think it's the best of the Guardians films, but I definitely think it's the best that the MCU has done in a long time. And like I said earlier, head and shoulders above what they've got going on right now. And just the kind of effort in writing and in set design and in filmmaking that is kind of rare at this dollar amount these days. You see these $200 million movies these days, and they feel like they're rushed. There's shoddy VFX. There's poorly thought out scenes. There's kind of weak writing. There's sometimes phoned in acting, and movies that aren't made with a lot of craftsmanship, like the movies that we really loved growing up. Yeah. And this movie had none of that. This was dripping with style and craftsmanship.
Yeah. Good to know.
Yeah.
Oh, pardon me. I mean, where I stand with all of that, but one of these days maybe you'll kidnap me and I'll have to watch it,
I mean, absolutely. I would love to watch this movie with you. If I didn't, it's a movie that, like, I would recommend just getting around to at some point. Like, for you, the Guardians of the Galaxy holiday special that you didn't see.
Yeah.
Like, if you watch that, it tees up everything for Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. And if you don't like those, I owe you a Coke, because you'll like them. Yeah.
Oh, man. I do love Coke.
I ain't talking about cola, brother.
Well, I think I can see your very brutal and hard to watch scenes in Guardians of the Galaxy 3 and raise you a Saw X.
Woo!
I think that if you had come up to fucking 15-year-old Johnny, who had probably just got done watching Saw 5 and said, hey, they're going to make like 5 more of these movies. And that 10th one is actually going to be the best.
That's the one
movie. I think I chuckled quite hard. But that's what happened. Saw X is, oddly enough, also filled to the brim with a lot of heart and more character development than damn near all the other Saw movies put together. Oddly enough, Tobin Bell as John Kramer is just delivers an absolutely standout performance. It's all the same creatives from all the previous Saw films. So they're all, it just feels like they're all working from a very matured sort of viewpoint while they're still making these, gore fests. But you can tell that they all almost are aware of their own mortality when making this specific picture, because it's dealing with a man knowing that he's going to die and people taking advantage of that. The kills are just fucking cringeworthy in so many different ways. Really make you squirm in your seat. There's a part where a guy has to cut open his own head and pull out pieces of his own brain, and it's bonkers in so many ways. And
no sativas before this movie is what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, you try to avoid that. But to each their own. It's also like really fun because there are these insanely elaborate traps, all this heavy machinery that you're just like, all right, so this man's dying of brain cancer and can barely fucking move, but he's getting this shit shipped in from where and putting it together. So, you do have to suspend your disbelief, but that's also like part of the fun of these movies is just
Sure.
how dedicated they are to maintaining the continuity, which is one of the most impressive things about the Saw franchise, is how every single thing, no matter how far back you go or how far forward you go, it all ties together like beautifully, and it's really insane. Saw X actually takes place between the first and second film. I don't know, man. I was just so entertained by it. I just rewatched it again a couple of days ago for the first time since I saw it in theaters, and like I enjoyed it just as much. When I was in the theater, I just had a big old fucking smile on my face when the Billy the puppet rolls out on his stupid fucking trike. Like, what the fuck? Certain characters show up again in cameos, and it's just so satisfying as a fan of the franchise. So I just so thoroughly am impressed with this film. Had absolutely no business being as good as it is, and I mean it legitimately. Like, the first Saw movie has been my favorite of the franchise ever since I saw it as like ever old I was, like 13, something like that, maybe 14, and just just had my mind blown by that ending. But this one
I
just,
love that first movie.
yeah, I mean, it's fucking genius.
Yeah, definitely.
But this one just precedes it in so many ways, just because it is just start to finish a very well told, heartfelt, if you can even imagine it, Saw film with just great kills, great traps, and fucking really outstanding performances. So really, kind of a 10 out of 10 movie for me.
Awesome.
Yeah, buddy. All right. Oh, you ready to do this? Because
Let's do it.
where we're gonna lose, everyone. Oh, okay. So for this next one here, which is gonna be it's my personal most disappointing film of the year, and Kalen also had hit on his list, but since he and I only had uh, two movies each that overlapped, and I figured we should save them both for last. And I think your good is your one of your absolute favorites for sure, though. And
Yep.
my number one good is definitely my absolute favorite for sure. So I just wanted to preface that this next film was the biggest disappointment for me, and was at least a disappointment for Kalen as well. So why don't you take it away, pal?
All right. Well, I'm really curious as to what you have to say on this one, but the biggest horror movie disappointment for me this year, if we're not counting Beau is Afraid, because that's debatable whether that lands in the horror realm or not. But for me,
And also, we should also preface what you said about Beau is Afraid and Spider-Man, that this is objectively
yeah,
a good movie.
good movie. It's a good movie. And also, well, okay, let's say what it is, and then I'll say the next thing. So we're talking about the movie Talk to Me.
Yeah.
And I want to be really clear about something, because like we're sitting here, making a podcast and YouTubing. This is a movie made by YouTubers.
Yeah.
And it's their first feature film, right?
Yeah.
So I'm not sitting here hating on these guys at all.
No.
If this was a friend of mine made this movie, if you made this movie as your first movie, I wouldn't be like,
Incredible.
oh, I don't know, bro, better not quit your day job. I'd say you did a really great job, and there are some lessons to take from here so that you can do better next time. But I think that the building blocks for greatness is here.
Yes.
I would say that to these guys. Like, if these guys were friends of ours, I would tell them, I think you're capable of being great filmmakers.
Yes.
I just don't think you nailed it on your first try, and I think that's okay.
Yeah, and I mean, I will also say that like this is hard for me to put in this position, but I couldn't figure out another, like there was just no way that I couldn't have this at my number one, because it was the biggest disappointment for me. And it's, let me clarify, it's not the movie maker's fault that it was the biggest disappointment for me. It's the hype.
The hype
Made it a disappointment, because
the hype preceded this movie.
I think this is a very well made picture and a very well told story. The problems that I have with it is simply that there are elements in this movie that are the scary elements that I think have been done better and done scarier in other movies. And I do not relate to the main character in the slightest. So all of her choices and ways that she did things, I was just like, well, you have it coming. Everything that happens to her, I'm like, cool, good for you. You deserve it. So like, I just like that is my thing, is that the main character is so selfish, and that is the premise of the film.
Sure.
That is the moral to the story, that you
she's also a teenage girl.
Yeah, teenage girl, and
I think that's part of it. She's young.
Trauma, because I can't fucking get away from that. If you want to make a prestige horror movie, there has to be fucking trauma involved for some reason. Can't I just make a movie where like people just get slashed up because it's a Turkey Day theme? You know, why not?
You want the healthiest, happiest people in the world just getting butchered. That's the movie you want.
So much more entertaining. But kind of when it was done, like I thought, like, all right, cool. I don't see what all the fuss is about. Like, I've seen other, like, I do not think it is the horror movie of the year, which is what people are saying it is. And
that's what it's going to go down as.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
My thought also is that in a handful of years, when we look back, it probably won't pack as much of a punch. Like, I don't quite get what it is that made people so infatuated with it, if I'm being completely honest. And I mean, this is not me trying to be contrarian in any way, shape, or form, and I could just not, maybe I just don't get it, you know. But I don't understand what it is about this specific movie that makes it more special than other movies of its ilk, basically. Is kind of where I'm at with it. What about you? How do you what's your gripes with it, as it were?
So, like, I think in a lot of ways it's like a really well made film. Like, I think it's like especially because like up until like the third act, I was like in, you know, I'm in. I'm like, okay, like this girl, she's going through some stuff. There's these characters. All the characters didn't really make sense to me. Their motivations didn't totally make sense to me. Some of the choices they made didn't make sense to me. I try to leave room for that, though, in stories about teenagers.
Yeah, I think that's...
I try to remember how dumb you are able to be as a teenager, even when you're a smart person, right? So, like, even a teenager who's a smart kid, they're still going to do some things that are, like, unbelievably dumb from time to time, just because you haven't gotten those reps in life and you haven't gotten, you know, the experience there. So I try to leave room for that. I was in, and I liked it fine. My big problem with the movie is that it feels like a story's a circle, right?
Yeah.
And so you start with like the regular world and the call to action, and then everything happens, and then the return to the new world, right?
Yeah.
It to me it felt like 70% of a story circle, and then just ended. Like
Yeah.
it didn't pay off what it was doing.
Yeah, I felt the same way. Like when it ended, I was like, okay. Like I get kind of the gut punch aspect of it, but it did feel not like I did think I was like, is there not more?
Exactly. I was like, no. Everyone sit back down. There's another 20 or 30 minutes of movie that has to happen still.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. That was something that like, I think I like looked over at Celeste and I was like, all right, that was cool. Like, that was again just like my general vibe of like, yeah, that was cool. Like it was something that like almost like it should have been a movie that like only like horror fans kind of knew about, and it was like, oh yeah, this is gonna be on, Shudder, and this
100%.
this did like really well at like a film festival and then got picked up by Shudder.
I would have liked this fine if it was a Shudder movie.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
it felt like it did not feel like this game changer of a horror flick for this year. But like I said, maybe I just don't get it. I mean, I understand teenagers are dumb and teenagers do dumb things, but like, and I mean, I guess it's kind of like playing with a Ouija board, which I've said before, just like fuck it, no.
Sure.
I
I've never had a Ouija board possess me and make me do weird things though, so I don't know.
Yeah. I don't know. That's shit like that. I just don't. I have no inclination to fuck with. So, and I honestly, I thought about it. Like, I was like really trying to like give the character the benefit of the doubt. I was thinking about this like yesterday. I was like, all right, well, if it were someone close to me that died, and I was desperate to get in touch with them and do that, and I was like, no, I still wouldn't do it. Like, I've seen Pet Cemetery. I know it's a bad idea. Like, no, I would not do it. Like, and I would not sacrifice, the people that I still had in my life that were alive.
Of course.
To do those things. So again, that's 100%. Where I'm like, I don't relate to the character. I don't like, I mean, I relate to her dealing with the loss of a loved one. I can respect that, but the choices that she makes, it's, like a drug addict. So I can't relate to what a drug addict goes through because I'm not an addict. So, but I do feel like that's kind of what that character ends up, doing. She does kind of feel a little bit like Ray Liotta at the end of Goodfellas, by the end of her movie. So I don't know.
I would say, just for a little bit of context and perspective on the way I'm looking at it, is like, if you had met me in high school and you had showed me that hand and I saw what it did to people, if the right people were telling me to do it, I'd have done it.
Yeah.
I would have straight up done it. Like, 100%. If like the right 4 or 5 people were like, no, bro, do it, it'll be great, I'd be like, okay. Yeah. So for what that's worth.
And I mean, like that wasn't even like, that's not even like my gripe with the movie. Like, I think that's something that a lot of people were relating to. They're like, oh yeah, the teenage element, they got that just right. And I'm like,
peer pressure, yeah,
like absolutely. Like, I don't have a problem with that at all. Like, I wouldn't have fucking done it, but I wouldn't do like 95% of the shit that people do in horror movies. So, take it for what it's worth. But yeah, like I said, this is a like, I couldn't even imagine being a YouTuber and getting a chance to make a movie like this. That's like the most awesome thing ever. And it's
100%.
It's a good movie. It is a well-told film. It's just not, like I said, I just don't think it is as insanely good as everyone kind of made it seem. And like I said, I really am not trying to be contrarian in any way, shape, or form. It just didn't hit the same way for me, and I was really let down because it seemed like it was supposed to be, you know, the fucking moon. So,
Right.
well, now that everyone stopped listening, I figured, you know, you and I just talk about this movie already because
Now that we've lost the audience entirely,
wanting to talk to you about this movie, and this is my movie of the year, I think. Like, I really kind of thought about this. Like, Saw X was like the one for me, and then this movie came around, and like I sat on it and thought more about it, and it's just like, dude, this was everything like I wanted from this movie, and I just think it is a stellar picture, and that is Godzilla -1.
Yep.
Kalen, this is also really up there for you as well.
Yep.
And you just saw it yesterday, so it is very fresh in your mind.
It is.
Yeah. Talk to me about it, buddy.
So yeah, I just went and saw this yesterday. I actually went after work. I never do that. So I had Sandy drop me off at work, and then she came to get me, and we went and saw the movie after work. We never do anything like that. She works early in the morning, you know, so she doesn't usually want to go to movies that late. But we did it yesterday because I just didn't want to come into this podcast having not seen the movie, and I was just really frustrated having not seen this movie because I'm hearing everyone else talk about it, and I'm like, God damn it, I want to watch that movie so bad. So we went and saw it yesterday, and I didn't know what to expect because you don't normally see a random just like a lower budget Japanese film getting just like the best reviews of any movie of the entire year.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You don't see that happen. And like, you know, I like Godzilla fine. I watched a lot of Godzilla movies as a kid. Like, I liked a lot of the old ones. I really love Gareth Edwards' Godzilla, you know? So like I'm interested in kaiju movies overall, but I just didn't understand like what am I going to see here that's going to be so special? Like I just didn't know what it was going to be. And I came away from this movie not only really loving the movie and being very, very fucking happy walking out of the movie theater, but also, and I'm very curious to talk to you about this, kind of scratching my head as to how it was so popular, because it to me does not feel like something that was meant to satisfy the masses. It's a very Japanese movie. It's giving very, very Japanese specific social commentary. It's dealing very much with Japanese culture, with Japanese historical trauma, right? With issues with the Japanese government, you know, past and present. Like it's just such a Japanese film. Like this wasn't a movie where this guy was like, "All right, I'm gonna make this movie and it's gonna be a worldwide hit." Like he made this for a Japanese audience. And while I have some understanding of the context of that Japanese culture that this movie is so deeply rooted in, I feel like a lot of people don't. Yeah. And so I'm kind of left to ponder how exactly this movie managed to get everyone to give it the shot that they did, to watch it with open eyes and an open mind and really let it do its thing. You know what I mean?
So I think there's a lot of different ways to go to probably attack that. And I will just start with me personally. So I love Godzilla movies. I love giant monster movies. Like I was obsessed with the idea of King Kong ever since I went on the Universal Studios tram and they had that giant monkey attacking the tram.
Hell yeah.
Scared the living shit out of me. I thought it was the coolest goddamn thing, and I'm kind of really bummed out that I'd never actually seen that scene in a King Kong movie because King Kong doesn't go to Los Angeles.
Right. Spoilers.
But I've been pretty obsessed with giant monsters since then, and I fell in love with Godzilla for absolutely all the wrong reasons, but I did not realize they were the wrong reasons until I got old enough and people started telling me that the Godzilla that I knew and loved was not Godzilla.
Uh-huh.
And now we jump all the way back to a couple of nights ago when Celeste was walking in on me watching Matthew Broderick, Hank Azaria, fighting 1998's Godzilla.
Oh, no.
That is the first Godzilla movie I ever saw, and knocked my fucking socks off, man. I thought it was so cool. I still, to this day, love how that story is paced, and I don't think any other monster movie has ever gotten the pacing right. I love how they just hint at him and do sound effects and show how destructive he is without showing him until you get 25% of the movie, and then he starts tearing up New York. My defense of that movie will take place on a future episode of this podcast. I can assure you.
Oh boy.
But I had not really seen a Godzilla movie that kind of worked. Like, again, I saw it when I was 8 years old, folks. So, like,
100%.
you know, give me a break. But I would go on to watch the original Godzilla and be really, really impressed with that. I saw that probably when I was, I don't know, like maybe 25-ish, and had to track it down on the internet and watch it on my laptop because I was so desperate to watch it. And just thought it was outstanding. An outstanding fucking scary portrait of Japan trying to deal with what had just happened to them as a country, basically.
Yeah.
And then Gareth Edwards' Godzilla came out a short while after I had seen that. That's probably one of the reasons why I was so desperate to make sure I saw the original going into that one.
Uh-huh.
And I thought that is a fine film. I think it does not lean hard enough into its two best assets, which are Bryan Cranston and Godzilla.
Yeah.
But again, that's a discussion for another day. Then in 2016, Toho Studios released Shin Godzilla, which is a fucking scary Godzilla movie. Really, like, they went back to basics and made Godzilla very, very scary. He morphs from this sort of like sea creature, sort of like almost like tadpole sort of thing, into the giant monster that he is. And it's a very political movie. It's very like the way that a monster would actually be handled. You see politicians and emergency people all talking constantly. So in those terms, it can be a little bit of a drag, but it's a very realistic portrayal of how, a country would try to fight this monster. And I thought that was a very, very good Godzilla movie. The thing that I think works with Godzilla Minus One is more so than any other Godzilla movie is that it gets that pacing almost just right for me personally. And it is just a really well told monster movie. They get, there's not an insane amount of Godzilla, but there's just the right amount of Godzilla. You get just the amount that you need. And he does do the same thing that he did in Shin Godzilla, where he kind of transforms a little bit, not transforms in shape, but he gets bigger, from the first time we see him to the next time we see him, he's grown. and he represents what he originally represented in the first film, and he's not a good guy. I don't like my Godzilla to be a good guy. Godzilla is a force of nature, and
A force of nature can be a good thing or a bad thing, though.
yeah,
Because I agree with you. Godzilla should be a force of nature.
he is, we'll call him like an act of nature, not unlike a tornado or an earthquake or something like that. I also think that the time period works really well for this. This is something that I've been a big fan of, like, ever since Prey, debuted last year. I love the idea of, like, all right, if we're gonna remake something or redo something or reboot something, just change the fucking time period, dude. I don't need everything to be modern. Set things in different times, and that immediately you have my interest. That makes it so much more interesting. How would people who don't have cell phones, who don't have, nuclear technology, try to handle these sorts of situations and stuff like that? And I don't think any American version of Godzilla has really been able to satisfy the masses. I don't think they've ever quite gotten him right, because they do, particularly with the MonsterVerse, he is an anti-hero, and now a full-blown hero, with Godzilla X Kong coming out and everything. And so I think that's kind of what made people kind of flock to this one, is that everyone was like, no, they got Godzilla right. They got him right. Like, he's scary, and almost like Jurassic Park sort of a deal before, they ran that franchise into the ground. As much as I do enjoy those movies, people like a good, well-told monster movie, and I just don't think we get too many of those. And this is a well-told monster movie with a really, really good human story that you, again, really don't get in Godzilla movies, like hardly at all. It's probably like, if you take Godzilla out of that movie, there's still a compelling story there. And that is really, really unique for a kaiju film. So,
I would argue that that's the movie.
Yeah.
Like I love Godzilla in this movie. I do. Like, I think Godzilla in this movie is fucking pitch perfect and amazing. But like, the movie is those characters. That story, that's the movie. And that's kind of what I'm saying here is why I was a little bit surprised that it got such universal praise. Is because Godzilla is not only secondary, but like secondary by a wide margin to the human story in this film. And I could totally be wrong here. I think people are a little bit ambivalent towards Godzilla being good or bad. I think people are just interested in it, like general audiences, I think, are mostly interested in, is it badass?
For sure.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. I just mean that, like, I think that making him like, monsters are more interesting when they're scary, right? Like, I just think that's kind of it. Like, I love Peter Jackson's King Kong, I really do, but he's not quite scary like he is in other interpretations, probably like the 1930s version, So sure. I do think people are more interested in a monster when there's something to be afraid of.
And this Godzilla was very scary. Yeah.
Scary. I mean, probably my favorite scene in the whole film. I don't know. There's a lot of good scenes in that movie, but the scene that you were talking about, that is very much inspired by Jaws. Them in the boat and him just in the water. Fuck, that's scary. That is a fucking scary scene. Just seeing his face pop out there. I was just like, I was in my brain. I was like, man, these guys, like, I know they're scared, but they're playing it a hell of a lot cooler than I would be. I would be shitting myself, man.
I mean, don't even. I would fucking faint, bro. Like, what?
Like, you see that
What am I
giant
supposed to do?
dinosaur head coming at you out of the water?
Yeah, like, oh man, yeah, that'd be something to deal with for sure.
I also think that there's a lot of different things going on here. I think also, weirdly enough, I think Oppenheimer probably played a part in this, because you think about what is happening in Japan at the time that this movie takes place. I think as many people saw Oppenheimer, maybe there's you get a little bit of a, people's interest peaked in, post World War II and everything that they're dealing with. I think it's a genius move to put. That was the thing that, like, when I first found out about this movie, I was like, oh dude, that's savage. Like, you're dealing with post World War II Japan, like, fresh off of all of that, and then you introduce Godzilla. That is a very, very hard, very like, time period for a giant monster to come attack that country. So I thought that that's very clever, and good characters, just beautiful cinematography. Everything about that movie looks really good.
Mm-hmm.
And I love the perspective of Godzilla, like how we see Godzilla. He's always framed as this giant monstrous being. We never kind of get, he's always being seen from a human perspective, which, again,
we never get Godzilla cam.
Yeah, no.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I agree.
I love in the end of that movie where he's flying around him and you just see him, like, walking in this open field or plains or whatever, and he's just so massive and so scary. And also the atomic breath being essentially a nuclear blast. It's never quite been that way before, and I thought that was really terrifying stroke of genius for this movie. So
yeah,
man, I
too.
I can't say enough good things. I know I ripped on it a little bit in my review for the main character being a little pouty throughout. And someone actually decided to write a very lengthy comment about some of my things that I said in my review that, again, were very, over the top comments that were more of a jokey manner, as far as, the way the character is, because he's going through some shit, but he does cry quite a bit. But,
well, I mean, his country got blown up.
Yeah, and
his parents were murdered. He blames himself for the death of like 20 people that he called comrades.
Yeah.
He forsaked his sacred duty as a. So I mean,
Yeah.
You might cry a little.
Yeah. Might cry a lot.
Maybe. I would.
Yeah.
Here and there.
I mean, just great storytelling. I mean, that's like nothing you know about going into the film, that it's going to deal with this kamikaze pilot that, that runs away from his duty. And
well, that shit was wild to me too. And this is kind of something I was talking about, is like, that stuff's not really, like, we don't have kamikaze pilots in the US.
Yeah.
We also don't have the same sort of cultural system of honor.
Yeah.
In the US. So like, I don't think people understand, like, if you were a kamikaze pilot and you came home and were like, yeah, I refuse to do my duty, like, your parents might disown you from the family.
Yeah.
And you might live the rest of your life in disgrace.
Yeah.
Like, that's a real thing. And now I'm not Japanese. I didn't grow up in Japan, and I don't know everything about Japan, but I know a little. And like, they take honor and dishonor and shame very differently than we do. People in Japan are more likely to, deal with public disgrace by like jumping off a tall building.
Yeah.
Like in the US, we tend to just like, I don't know, move. You know what I mean? And like you know what I mean? Like we tend to move and like make new friends and like try to deal with it. But like in Japan, there's a much more severe sort of culture around those things. And you know, we don't have kamikaze pilots. We don't have that sense of honor and duty very much in this country. And we don't hold shame in the same regard that the Japanese do. And also like there's so much commentary there on the war, and like there's a little bit of culpability going on there where I feel like the movie's commenting on how like some of the things about that war were actually Japan's fault, and like maybe the government should take some responsibility for mistreating their people and for putting them through this terrible situation. And you know, maybe the Japanese citizens who didn't want to obediently do as they were told, maybe they weren't wrong. You know what I mean? And maybe they should have valued life more. And there's even this like post-war sort of pacifistic movement in Japan that happened post-war. If you ever hear Miyazaki talk about violence, he's got this very pacifist sort of mentality that is a common thing of people from that post-war Japan era.
Yeah.
And again, I don't want to misspeak here on things that I'm not an expert on. So if anyone's listening to this and I'm getting anything wrong, please let me know what I got wrong. But this is just the best of my understanding. I feel like this movie's commenting on a lot of these things, and I feel like in a lot of ways this movie's actually about these things.
Yeah.
And so this is part of why I'm like, wow. So like all the Americans liked this movie, huh? Like that's unique to me. And you're making a lot of good points. Like the characters are relatable regardless, and the monster is fucking awesome regardless.
Well,
I do find that interesting.
That's one of the reasons why. Because you and I are both coming at this from two different avenues as far as why people like probably love this movie and what this movie has to say. And that's your answer right there, bud. Like that's because you can go into this movie and get so much out of it. It's got a lot on its mind, and at the end of the day, you can just go see a monster movie, or you can go see a movie about post-war Japan dealing with X, Y, and Z, and
with so many things
about that. There are so many different things to get out of this movie. And I mean, you're really smart and I'm really dumb. So I see monsters go boom and I'm like, yay. You're over here being very intellectual about the whole thing. And that's why this movie is so great, because it has surface level stuff, but you can dig deeper and deeper, and there's so much to pull from it. And again, on top of that, this movie was made for $15 million and looks better than almost every big budget blockbuster thing that came out this year. Like, get the fuck out of town, man.
Yep. The only thought I have on that is that there are definitely shots there where if that were an American blockbuster, there are shots that people point to and be like, you can tell that it's not very good CG. But that kind of goes back to my other point about how like perfect CG is overrated. The movie looks great overall, and the big sequences that have to look good look really good. There's a certain scene in Ginza where Godzilla is present, and there are some people talking about Godzilla and looking at Godzilla. That is maybe one of the most awesome and impactful cinematic scenes I've ever seen in my entire life, and reminded me of being a kid watching like Jurassic Park, like with the amount of impact that it had for me, where I was just like, holy shit, this is just incredible.
Yeah. I feel the same way. Like that was kind of what, like if I can sit and just be like in awe of the monster, like mission accomplished, man. Like I kind of felt that a little bit in Gareth Edwards. Like when you first see Godzilla like stomping through the airport and you see his foot and everything, you see how big it is. Like I loved all of that. You know, I love that perspective to get the scale, and he's a mean guy in this one. He's not a nice fellow at all. So,
he's a mean Godzilla.
But yeah, man. I can't wait to watch it again.
Special movie.
Uh-huh. Definitely the top one of the year for your boy. So, um, yeah, buddy. I think that's gonna do it for us. Where are we at? We're at just about 3 hours here. So look at us go.
Wow.
Um, well, before we wrap all this up, I know we do this every time, but now since we're at the start of the year, it doesn't have to be horror. I know that you're looking forward to Nosferatu, which we got like a year.
Yep. Yep.
Any other movies that that are coming out in 2024 that you are aware of and excited for?
Yeah, so Nosferatu is like tied or like tied three-way tie for like my most anticipated of the entire year. Dune Part 2. Denis Villeneuve Dune Part 2 is a huge one. I can't wait for that movie. Bong Joon-ho has a new movie coming out this year called Mickey 17, starring Robert Pattinson, Stephen Yeun, and Toni Collette.
Oh, fuck
yeah. Yeah. And I've been waiting for that one. I can't wait for that. George Miller is finally putting out the Furiosa movie starring Anya Taylor-Joy this year.
Yeah.
And I love George Miller and I love Anya Taylor-Joy, so I can't wait for that one. Those are my like most anticipated movies. There's one other one where it's like it could be good or it could be bad, but I can't wait to find out. And that is Francis Ford Coppola's Megalopolis that apparently he's been trying to make since like the early 80s. And that's starring Adam Driver and Aubrey Plaza and Shia LaBeouf and several other people.
Yeah, that's crazy, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can't wait for that.
I got Furiosa up there. I'm kind of a little bit bummed that it looks like it's a lot more CG heavy overall as opposed to practical. But, you know, if the movie's good, I doubt it'll matter because it looks pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
I gotta be honest, my most anticipated horror movie is Terrifier 3. They released a teaser trailer where Art the Clown is dressed up as Santa Claus and murders a little girl on Christmas. That is just in keeping with the rest of the franchise and how fucking fucked up it is and looks all kinds of scary and trashy all at the same time, which I'm there for. Trying to think. I know there's other stuff, but my brain is definitely going blank right now as far as what movies are coming out this year. I feel like we don't have like a ton of horror releases coming up right now. I think we got a new Ghostbusters movie coming out, so that's kind of interesting.
We do.
That one looks pretty fun too.
I liked the last one, so
yeah, I really liked that young gal who played Egon's granddaughter. I thought she did such a great job. She's a great actress, but I especially liked her in that last Ghostbusters movie, so I'm pretty excited for that. And I'm trying to think. I feel like there's one big one that I can't fucking think of right now, but either way, I think we do have a good year ahead of us as far as film, but who knows how far we'll get with that because of all the writers and actors strikes and shit. And I'm sure some stuff will be stuck in development hell and shit like that. So,
well, they already pushed. Jordan Peele wanted to have a Christmas horror movie out this Christmas. And Universal already took it off the list. So I was like, damn it. I wanted that so bad.
I want that too, actually.
Yeah. I want that.
Pretty great, as a matter of fact.
Yeah.
All right, buddy. Well, this was a lot of fun. I really appreciate you taking the time, all fucking 3 hours of it, to discuss movies with me. That's the fucking
Anytime, brother.
the fucking tits, and I'm here for it. So, um, until we meet again, my friend, and thank you to everyone who tuned in. We got some stuff coming up for you on the Johnny Horror podcast. We're just I'm just gonna say it right now because you and I have teased it and talked about it. We are gonna be tackling M. Night Shyamalan's superhero trilogy. That's probably the next thing on our agenda. In all honesty, I'm just gonna fucking stop beating around the bush and we're just gonna do it. Talking Unbreakable, Split, and Glass. A very interesting and complex trilogy that definitely deals in the horror realm
Absolutely.
in a number of ways, and maybe one of the best superhero movies ever thrown into that mix. So look forward to that. That's soon to be on the horizon, and yeah, you can always find me over at the Johnny Horror Show. We're doing reviews, we're doing podcasts, and all sorts of other fun things with or without clothes. But in the meantime, I am your host, Johnny Horror, and my co-host and good buddy, Kalen Behrman, signing off. Thank y'all so much, and we will see you motherfuckers on the flip side. Adios,
Peace.
muchachos.